Okay, well, good morning, everyone. I hope you had a restful evening. And I will now reconvene the general session. Will the recording secretary please call roll?
Kirsten Barnes.
Here.
Catherine Williams Brown.
Here.
C. Michael Cooney.
Here.
Marisol De La Torre Escobedo.
Here.
Anna Marie Francois. Makita Gwynno Shire.
Present.
Johanna Harwick.
Here.
Alicia Hine.
Here.
Terry Jackson.
Here.
Bonnie Cladd. Kevin Quinn.
Present.
Jean Marks.
Here.
Cynthia Martin. Monica Martinez.
Here.
Ade Rodriguez.
Here.
David Simmons.
Here.
Tina Sloan.
Here.
Andrew Wall. I don't see. We have a quorum.
Thank you. I'd like to remind members of the public who join the meeting through the webcast or the toll-free number that you may request to make public comment by sending an email to comments@ca.gov or call 916-322-6253. Please make sure the request includes your full name, your phone number if participating through the phone only, your affiliation, and the agenda item number and title. Make sure the name you provide matches the name used to join the meeting. The meeting host will call your name and unmute your microphone to allow you to share your comment during the public comment period. After you finish your comment, your microphone will be muted by the meeting host. Okay, I now recess the general session and move to the Educator Preparation Committee. Commissioner Rodriguez, will you please reconvene the committee?
Absolutely. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So we have 4 remaining items, and I'm just going to tell you the order that we'll be going through these. And this is related to presenter schedule. So we're accommodating them. We're starting with 2B this morning, then 2D, 2F, and 2E. All right. So I'll repeat the instructions for members of the public. If you wish to speak on a specific item, please email your request to comments@ctc.ca.gov or call 916-322-6253. Indicate which item you wish to speak on so that we can call your name during the appropriate time. Please make sure the request includes your full name, phone number, and if you're participating through phone only, your affiliation and the agenda item number and title. Make sure that the name you provide matches the name used to join the meeting. The meeting host will call your name and unmute your microphone to allow you to share your comments. After you finish your comment, the microphone will be muted by the meeting host. Okay, so item 2B is discussion of proposed changes in language for initial program review preconditions. This item is being presented by Miranda Gutierrez and Poonam Betty. This is an information action item. Ms. Betty, will you please begin?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, commissioners.
Morning.
Thank you. Can you all hear me okay? Okay, perfect. During the commission meeting held this January, there was concern raised during public comment regarding the initial program preconditions, and in particular, the demonstration of need precondition. This was well timed as staff had been discussing both the demonstration of need and the practitioner's participation in program design preconditions. As a bit of a brief background, these preconditions were formerly part of the 10 original general preconditions that were adopted in 1995. And they were later redesignated as the initial program preconditions that we know them as today. And the wording of these preconditions during the course of that time period has barely changed. So in this item, we've included the initial program preconditions at the bottom of page 1 and at the top of page 2. Preconditions are a matter of compliance as they're grounded in Education Code, the California Code of Regulations, or Commission policy. And the question that this boils down to is, has the institution demonstrated that they're compliant with the precondition, yes or no? And overall responses to these initial program preconditions have been fairly general. For example, for the demonstration of need precondition, we typically see institutions submit a letter of support from an LEA, and for their practitioners' participation in program design, institutions tend to submit a table or agenda minutes that show an LEA representative was in attendance in an advisory board meeting. So again, fairly general. And so institutions that are responding to these preconditions do not really have specific guidelines regarding the type of evidence that they could be providing to show compliance. So keeping this in mind, I would now like to turn this presentation over to my colleague Miranda, who will provide both the recap of the Committee on Accreditation's discussion at its March meeting regarding these preconditions, and she'll also review the possible revisions to the language of these preconditions.
Thank you, Poonam. As Poonam mentioned, public comment at the January 2020 Commission meeting raised this issue about how institutions demonstrate the need when they are applying for a new program through initial program review. So because of that, staff brought an agenda to the March COA meeting on most of those preconditions for some committee member discussion. At that meeting, staff suggested that the demonstration of need precondition could be revised so that institutions proposing a new program would be required to provide data on the number of teachers in their region of the proposed program, the number of teachers that are serving on less than a full credential. So that would be data on teachers who are serving on an intern, the provisional intern, and the short-term staff permits. And all of this data is already available on the Commission data dashboards. During that COA meeting, the committee members really focused on the second precondition regarding the collaboration between IHEs and LEAs, and really emphasized the importance of that collaboration. So based on that discussion and conversation, staff drafted revisions to both of the initial program preconditions, which can be found on pages 2 and 3 of the agenda item. So for the demonstration of need, the drafted language includes the addition of adding data to demonstrate the need, as was suggested at that COA meeting. And the drafted language will also require an affirmation for the need based on the data available. So an affirmation from employers in the region that they indeed do intend and need to hire teachers in that credential area. For the practitioner's participation in program design, the drafted language includes changing the title to read Collaboration in Program Design and Implementation. So to respond to this preconditions, institutions could be required to submit a table of those who were involved and included in the planning, and in the table include their title, their role, their affiliation. As Poonam mentioned, we would still want to see agenda minutes, agenda meetings, and minutes in this new precondition or revised. And then we'd also want to see evidence that there will be collaboration continuing. So the proposed language of that second precondition is intended to ensure that there is authentic collaboration between the IHE and LAE from the start of program design and through implementation. And so the implementation piece actually spills into the common standard. So if there's truly an authentic partnership and collaboration during the program design, this may help and enable the institution to maintain that collaborative relationship. Staff has noticed during site visits that institutions also have a challenge demonstrating an ongoing partnership between the IHE and K-12 community. And sometimes these partnerships do not extend beyond the participation in the respective advisory board or advisory committee. And this directly impacts Common Standard 1 because there's a piece about collaboration with the K-12 practitioners. This also affects Common Standard 3 with the implementation of fieldwork. And then it also impacts Common Standard 4, which is about continuous improvement. So verification that this partnership will continue through the implication can also be substantiated by the Common Standard submission and confirmed during a site visit. So perhaps if this precondition were to become more robust, it would encourage programs to continue this process of collegial collaboration as a critical piece of the professional preparation of new educators. And based on today's discussion, staff will collect feedback from the field and bring a future item to the commission for possible adoption. Then if those preconditions were to be adopted, staff would begin the process to put those preconditions into Title V of the California Code of Regulations. And this is an information action item. So staff recommends that the commission discuss the drafted preconditions provided and provide feedback and direct staff to seek feedback from the preparation programs and employers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gutierrez. So we will now open for public comment. Do we have any public comment on this item?
Yes, we do. Mariama Gray, please state your name and affiliation for the record.
Good morning, commissioners. My name is Dr. Mari Gray, and I'm an assistant professor of educational leadership at CSU East Bay. Thank you for the letter you wrote in acknowledgement of the trauma affecting the Black community. I support CTA's recommendations to consider demonstrated needs so that proposed programs do not duplicate existing ones, nor erode the participation base. I graduated from San Jose State's Urban High School Leadership Program, which closed due to competition from county and district offices. Its graduates were prepared to be exactly the kinds of educational leaders that schools need today, focused on instructional leadership and able to develop strong climates and cultures of high student achievement and well-being. Programs across the state's public and private universities are struggling to maintain their student base. The approval of county offices and school districts as educational institutions has transformed their mission from one of educating students and providing professional development to teachers to competing directly with the CSU mandate to offer instruction and education, a mission from the state legislature. Please consider the impact on the CSU, prioritize programs in underserved communities and credential areas, and encourage collaboration with the CSU when approving future programs. Thank you for your consideration of these concerns.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments?
No, we have received no further comments.
Okay, so we will open it up for commissioner discussion. And again, we're looking for feedback and conversation so that, they can proceed based on our comments on this item. Commissioners? Commissioner Sloan?
Okay, I'll go first. So I have a couple of questions about this item. I think this is a very important item. And one question I have is that we rely quite a lot on determining need by region, by whether or not there are teachers needed in the region in which somebody wants to set up a program. And I wonder about that. I know that we have a lot of evidence, in the past that there programs in which candidates are prepared oftentimes are hired in that same area. And I think there are a lot of reasons for that. One is that people tend to often go to the place where they want to teach to be prepared in that place because they are preparing in schools that they may get hired in. Another may simply be that because they had been working in those schools and the schools came to know them well, they were hired there. But I don't know that region it should be such a strong factor in determining need, or one of the primary factors in determining need. In other words, I would want to know that wherever our preparation programs lie in the state, that they have really strong partnerships with the K-12 community. and that the K-12 community is offering placements and supports that are high quality, that are really going to prepare teachers for working in the kinds of environments that they offer in that region. We already require that the schools need to serve a diverse population of students, that teacher candidates need to be working with students with special needs, all kinds of things. But what's really, we know, important in high quality preparation are strong partnerships where our K-12 entities are highly engaged and highly involved. And so some of this language is helping, I think, in moving us in that direction, in not just sort of saying, it's asking partnerships to really designate a little further, what is it that you're going to do? What's the role of the partner? Not just a letter saying, sure, we welcome this higher ed partner or preparation partner in our region. So I think that's important. But I also want to, I would love to hear from some of our commissioners who hire teachers to understand a little bit more about what is it that what's helpful about, what is it that you look for? Is it whether they have been prepared in your region, or is it something else, for instance? I'm just going to open that for a moment.
Okay, Commissioner Brown, you had your hand up.
I did, but I'm not answering Tina's question, so I put it down just so that would give space for her answer. So I'll just be brief. I think that the person that came and described an issue around the challenges of higher ed, innovative higher ed programs, I think is really worthy of consideration. And I'm not sure how to address it, but it's a systemic issue that happens, at least I could mention that it does happen at the community colleges. We get involved with certain schools and it's great for an opportunity of a pipeline. But if the schools themselves they're looking for people to hire that will do things the way they do it. And that's okay, except that what happens is the innovation of pedagogy that often higher ed programs, and the program that she was describing that then got cut out because it was innovative, but it was too small, I think is something to consider. So maybe I'm indirectly, Ms. Gray, addressing your issue, but also trying to answer Tina's, is that dynamic between the LEAs or the school systems themselves is important to have the connection, and the schools themselves will have a diversity of students, but will they have innovative pedagogy like the IHEs do? So I think we have to address both of those so that we're both connecting with our communities, but also preparing teachers with innovation, not just with the way schools are doing it right now.
Thank you. David Simmons, and then Commissioner Greenough-Shire.
Well, as someone who hires certificated people, I think I can answer part of Tina's question, at least with regard to what I'm looking for. I work with institutions that can provide me with diversity, which can provide me with competent practitioners, and I'm on several advisory groups for institutions in my area. And part of the reason why I want to be part of those advisory groups is because then I need to know what it is that I have to do to support those employees when I hire them. There's one institution we work with that really does not have a great pass rate on RICA. So then I know that if I'm going to hire somebody from there, I may have to put them on a STIP for a year and then get them the training necessary for them to pass RICA. But I think it's also what Commissioner Brown said is also true. I'm looking to hire people to do things the way our district does them. And that is the purpose of having a credential program, is so that employers can hire people to do those things. This week I was on the Cal State Teach Advisory Board. That's a statewide program that I think has been that helps us bring in diversity into our area. And it was it was in the midst of all of the civil unrest. It was a powerful meeting. And I think that it's very helpful for K-12 to be part of that communication. But that also brings up the issue that was brought up also about region. So when you have in an increasingly online world where a program may define its region in the preconditions, there's nothing that keeps them from expanding into other regions. So I don't have a solution on that, but I do think it is it's an interesting question. In my previous life, I actually had 9 different credential programs, and meeting this precondition was, it was not one of those things that had to be really thought through. It was one of those things, because coming from a county office, that's just the way we do things. You have all of the districts that are your partners. You have the universities that operate within your region, and you are constantly trying to meet what their demands are, because if you don't meet those market demands, you go out of business. So that's at least my input for the chair's questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Greneau-Shire.
Good morning, all. I can't speak to what a district is looking for when they're hiring one of our graduates, but what I thought I might offer in response to Chair Sloan's question about the importance of deep clinical partnerships are some lessons that we've learned from the New Generation of Educators initiative that is just finishing up this year. Some of you have heard me talk about this before. This was an initiative that was supported by the S.D. Bechtel Jr. Foundation. With support from the foundation and other partners, we were able to take a real deep look at our educator preparation programs in 5 areas. And one of those areas was building university and school district partnerships. And what we learned, and there is a report available that I will share with the commissioners this morning, is that initiating and sustaining partnership requires true co-ownership of the work, including having joint goals from the outset. This partnership requires making the time and space to communicate frequently and to share decision-making across district and university lines. So there are many, many important lessons in this report that I will share that may help to inform this conversation moving forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Greneau-Shire. Would anybody else like to give some feedback or comment on this item? Yes, Commissioner Martinez.
Thank you. It seemed not to be smart enough to do it online, to do the digital, so I have to use my digits, as Commissioner Rodriguez likes to say. My question is probably a bit naive and obvious, but do we look at the data that CTC collects about the shortages around the state and in specific areas, and the connection we've been able to use in some of the dashboards around grade level, special education, and all of that? And I knew that Terry would have an answer, so I will end there.
Good morning, commissioners. The staff does look at that data, but not for this purpose with a new program proposal. A new program that comes in, they submit an intent to submit a program, and the preconditions, as Miranda and Poonam were explaining, are really precursor requirements. They're not requirements about the quality of the program, which are reviewed by members of the Board of Institutional Reviewers. The preconditions are the simple things of, if you're an IHE, are you WASC accredited or accredited by another regional accreditor? And so the evidence of that is a copy of your WASC letter. There are yes or no situations. And for these two specific new program preconditions, we had noticed that the yes or no and the evidence for the yes was very, very superficial. And so what we are suggesting here is that the evidence, the decision-making, yes or no, it's a ministerial decision that staff makes, the ante be upped a little bit. And so asking that the proposed program sponsor analyze the data and then say, in noticing this, this is one of the reasons we believe this program would be appropriate here. So staff does not do that, and that does not come into the decision-making for a new program. But what we're suggesting is that the new sponsor should do that analysis and make that kind of a claim.
That's very reassuring as we, continue to face teacher shortages by different content areas, subjects, grade levels, all of that. So I appreciate the encouragement for folks to look at the data that we collect. Thanks, Terry.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown and then Commissioner Sloan.
Well, briefly, it's really helpful to hear from both, particularly from David, but also Marquita, about these issues around advisory groups and the importance of this. I know I kind of took us off in that direction, and Monica's helped us get back on track. But I think that that's one of the reasons why this opens up that idea of how important it is to have those strong connections. In the community college world, we have joint advisory boards, and the California Mentor Teacher Program has been critical in keeping that early childhood IHEs and the community together. So I just wanted to make that quick mention. I also would really endorse getting the stakeholders involved, both from the comment that we got this morning and also the letter that we received.
Thank you. Commissioner Sloan?
Thank you. One of the things that I have been thinking about, and I appreciate both Commissioner Brown's and Commissioner Greno-Shire's comments, because our way of thinking about region and need has been about the need for hiring teachers in that area. And a lot of our work around quality teacher preparation is really focused on putting practice-based teacher preparation at the center of our work. And as the report that Commissioner Greno-Shire alluded to is helpful in our thinking around this. There's also a report that came out by the National Academies Press. It was called, let's see, Changing Expectations for the K-12 Workforce. It came out this year. I recommend that as well. There are several books. I know Commissioner Martinez is involved in this work. Linda Darling-Hammond, Teacher Preparation for Deeper Learning. All of these reports are pointing to the critical need for engaging with tight partnerships between programs and the K-12 spaces in which our teachers are prepared, and the innovation and the need for moving the needle in the ways that we have all been talking about is going to originate here. Part of what I think is wonderful about these partnerships is not just about the outcome of preparing these teachers. It's about what happens while they're on campuses. It's about the learning that goes on when you have people in the K-12 community working closely with people in the higher education community, working closely with brand new teachers. Just for instance, our cooperating teachers are always talking about how much they learn by reflecting on their own practice and explaining their own practice. And then we have also seen that, particularly in this time of moving towards distance learning, there are a lot of things that our new pre-service teachers have brought into that space that has been particularly helpful. And ultimately, what happens is that when we have student teachers and cooperating teachers working in a school together, closely dedicated to the needs of the school and the students, it provides better educational opportunities for students. And I believe that there are several teachers on this call who have worked with student teachers in their schools, and I am just wondering if we could get your perspective on what makes strong opportunities in your experience when there are student teachers in your schools.
Commissioner Hartwig?
Perhaps I could hold I just have a small question. Perhaps I could hold that until other folks respond to Commissioner Sloan's question to the teachers on the commission.
Okay, Commissioner Marks?
Commissioner Marks, you're on mute.
I think I can respond a little bit to the question, but I really have a history question myself. Just whether this question of need comes because programs are moving in and competing, or is there just a vacant hole and there's not a need? My experience as a teacher is that teacher preparation programs are not flexible. And it is really a struggle to get teacher candidates at a school like ours. Because because of that, I've kind of reached out and talked to a few deans of teacher prep programs, and they say to me, quite frankly, they don't place candidates at schools like ours because they don't align clearly with the TPEs, and certainly it's a struggle for teachers to pass the RECA at a school like ours because we teach reading in a different way, a more superior way, I would like to say, but so it's I don't see a lot of flexibility. So when I'm surrounded by CSUs, but if there's a teacher prep program that moves into their area with greater flexibility, I'm gonna reach out to those deans and those people and say, please place us. We have a need. We have an inspired creative curriculum that's rigorous and meets standards and exceeds Common Core standards. So I guess I need a history question about why need, because there's a lot. So I don't know if I have a clear question.
I'm trying to frame what to say to this. The Education Code requires that the Committee on Accreditation approve new programs when they meet the Commission's standards. There's nothing in the Education Code that we found to date that says only approve programs if there's not other programs. It says if the proposed program meets the standards, a committee, you can approve the program. And there's a lot of different reasons programs are approved. There could be an increase in need. There's more students, and the programs that are currently there are not providing a sufficient supply. We know that in the area of math, science, special education, we need more credentialed teachers. And so it's hard to say that any specific geographic region of the state has sufficient preparation for math, science, or special education or bilingual teachers. Those four groups of teachers, pretty much anywhere, I think, could show that there is a need for that type of program. So that's what the precondition has historically done. There is a concern, are we just, getting too many programs? Prior to the institution of the accreditation fee for when you want to propose a new program, staff worked with a lot of entities, and they would propose something and they would work, but then they might just drop back out. Once the extraordinary fee process went into place, that slowed down and it was more thoughtful, I think. Same thing with new institutions. Your new institutional approval process has really, I think, streamlined out the people that really want to move forward, work through the steps and move forward. So one of the questions is, how do we make sure that this happens with proposed programs? Because it's a lot of resources on the institution side to plan for this program, develop it, make the proposal, submit it, and then there's the resources used on the commission side to find people to review the program, to prepare it for the agenda, get it approved. So a lot goes into proposing a new program. So it's a matter of how do we know the appropriate programs are moving forward for approval by the committee.
Madam Chair, could I just add to that history piece? And I appreciate you, Terry, well said. But I've been thinking about one of the core missions of a standards board and what we're here to do. We accredit every preparation program that leads to a credential. And part of our responsibility in that is to protect the public, to ensure that we have viable institutions out there doing this work that meet our standards, obviously, for program quality and effectiveness, but also, fit within the larger infrastructure that we manage. If we let 1,000 flowers bloom, and the letter in your packet on this item actually alludes to this, it does get out. It raises the question of how much is necessary to provide a workforce for California Public Schools, and how much can we manage as a commission, and what rights do you have as the standards board to set priorities for preparation? And I think you have very broad authority. I believe that the item cites the different authorities you have to set requirements for entry into the industry of teacher preparation. And you've articulated some important priorities today already. You've articulated, of course, the ongoing need to address shortages and to make sure that our infrastructure of teacher preparation is responsive to that to the extent that we can. Sometimes that means, we run grant programs to expand opportunities within the existing preparation system. Sometimes that means that we recognize new programs. Making sure that those programs are connecting with the ultimate beneficiary of their preparation programs, meaning the schools and that need to hire these teachers. Looking for ways to support innovation within this field of teacher preparation. Exercising fairness, that's a key quality of the work that I think you need to do, is to minimize any bias towards any particular type of preparation programs and bring a fairness evaluation to your consideration of institutions that might want to open here. So in the declaration of need and the involvement of practitioners in development and design, I think you have the opportunity to set some priorities that guide you in the future. And it's an important function that we play here. It isn't a completely open market because the market depends upon the approval of this agency, you as commissioners, in order to grow and expand. So just wanted to add a little philosophy, political science. I'm not sure what discipline that is, but.
A little of both. Great. Yeah.
Could I add a little more? What Mary said just reminded me of something. If we go back prior to the 2008-09 recession that started, the California State University system, almost all campuses had both a fall and spring admission to teacher preparation. So when a candidate missed the fall admission because maybe they hadn't taken their CBEST or their CSET or something, they had the opportunity to apply to start in the spring semester instead of starting in the fall semester. That went away during the recession, and it's starting to come back at some campuses, I believe. The UC almost universally, I believe, only accepts candidates in fall. They start at the fall and they do pretty much a one-year program and they're out. Many of the privates are the same way, although we have other privates that now have different acceptance plans. I know of a private university down in the Southern California area. It is a religiously affiliated institution and it accepts candidates every 6 weeks. There's a 6-week admission window and they start in a block and they have a different type of semester system, but they start more often. And so when the question was before, why might there be a need for other programs? Some of the time it has to do with when can a candidate apply to, get accepted, get enrolled, and start their preparation. So that's another one of the factors out there as to why some of the county programs because sometimes they have a little more of a flexibility that they don't have to have applied by a certain date some number of months prior to starting the program.
Thank you for that, Terry. So we have Commissioner Sloan and Commissioner Simmons, but we still have Commissioner Hartwig. Is this a good time for you to ask your question? Would you like to do that?
Sure. And I think what Terry was talking about may have alluded to it some. I actually have two questions. I actually wanted to ask Mary to follow up just a little bit more to talk about when she talked about using fairness as part of the evaluation process. I was just hoping to hear a little bit more about what kinds of factors of fairness it is that you thought that we should be, that should be considered, because I thought that was interesting, but I wanted to hear just a little bit more, Mary. And then my clarification or just education for me question was, when I was looking at the revised language going for the demonstration of need, in the demonstration of need, the revised language, it now talks about a demonstration of the need for the type of program in the region in which it will operate, or a need for educators prepared through a specific program delivery model. And as someone who is not an educator myself, I was just interested in this expansion into these two different options, I guess I would say, and how that relates to how things were categorized before. And also to make sure I understood that when we were talking about a need for educators prepared through a specific program delivery model, is that still attached to the idea of that being a regional need? I couldn't tell if from the language if that was so, or if you might have need for a specific program delivery model that would expand beyond the region's need to the statewide needs. And I was just interested in that in terms of the questions that we had about how regionally focused should our demonstration of need be. So those were just my two questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Sloan and then Commissioner Simmons.
I would actually, could we have Commissioner Hartwig's questions addressed first?
Sure, I'm happy to start and just say that, by fairness, I think that allowing an entity that's interested in opening preparation to present their case to you without regard to any other particular bias you might have about types of institutions, types of entities, within the scope of law. I'm hearing some of the considerations that you're adding to this conversation beyond just need for and the production of numbers of teachers. As you talk about, innovation and innovative preparation routes, and I'm hearing the beginning of an expansion of a concept of need that goes beyond just numbers and beyond just what the current entities in the state are producing in those numbers. I think Commissioner Mark's question about flexibility and about institutions that are willing to consider placing their student teachers in more flexible and more alternative environments for preparation. Those are the kinds of questions that ought to be considered, I would think, as you are as you're thinking about and evaluating, or as the staff is evaluating on your behalf, whether or not an institution meets the requirements for moving forward. So it's challenging to consider this, in part as Ms. Betty said, and as Terry, I think, reiterated. This is a ministerial decision. The staff makes the decision about whether a precondition is met or not after you've framed it. So framing it so that your staff can answer the question yes or no is important. Because the more evaluation the staff needs to make about an application for admission into the guild here of teacher preparation, the less ministerial it becomes. So those are just some of the things that I was thinking about in terms of fairness and the issues that we'd like to have be considered.
Thanks.
And then if I could add a little bit about that delivery option, as our public comment speaker said today, a program specifically designed for urban high schools. So if a large urban high school district or a large urban district went to their local university, county office, whomever is approved to offer preparation and said, we are really interested in a program that specifically focuses on this need, that would be kind of a specialized delivery model. The other one we were definitely thinking about is the idea of teacher residencies. If a teacher residency is somewhat the gold standard and some local education agency goes to their local university, college, whomever, and says, we really want to make a teacher residency partnership with you, that's a specialized type of delivery model. And if the LEA and the IAG together can show just cause for that, that we thought should be considered as a valid reason for a new program. It's not just a proliferation of another program, it's a program meeting a specialized need.
Thanks.
Commissioner Sloan and then Commissioner Simmons.
I think this, one of the things this conversation is making me think about is how important it is, and I'm not sure, for me, we're going to be done here. Not only that, I think that as we are going to go through our strategic planning and really re-looking at our work as we talked about yesterday for equity and all sorts of issues, that I think this is going to be one of those that we are going to revisit. And one of the things, particularly if we are thinking about what might be a pretty fundamental systemic change to organizing teacher education around practice, it might be more about ensuring that the partnerships, the higher education or the not even higher ed, but the programs and the K-12 partners both have the capacity and the commitment to preparing teachers in that region. I think I agree with the need for bringing this item forward. I think there have been too many times where an entity has gone out and said, I want to set up shop here, looked around for K-12 partners. Would you be involved? Involvement is rather nebulous. I'll write a letter. Yes, we'll be involved. But I think we have to really understand the capacity of partners to truly engage in creating these programs and running them over time. The other thing I think about is we should think about giving precedence to shortage areas. We do need more special education, STEM teachers, other teachers. We should be considering that within considering this work. The other pieces about capacity would be, who else are the K-12 entities partnering with? How is it all working and integrated? Is there are some areas where there are regional partnerships between multiple programs and schools. How is that working and looking? And then I also noticed in the preconditions, in one part, it talks about we could have, where is it? New programs, by raising the requirement for new programs to authentically include post-secondary education institutions, employers of credentialed teachers, K-12 practitioners in the initial design of the program, this precondition can set the expectation that collaboration between these groups is essential in preparing new teachers. So I completely agree with that. And then at the same time, I think that we need to not just require new programs to do this, but transition as we figure this out, all programs to do this. The last thing I will just say about this is the idea of innovation. And one thing Commissioner Marks made me think about, I think we have, because of the way our standards were previously written, it was a little difficult to have clinical placements outside of the realm of what was needed in a clinical placement, that they had to be working with a diverse group of students. They needed to be meeting or using the standards that the teaching standards, or the content, K-12 content standards of the state, and all of those things. And that is absolutely true. We need that at the core of what we're doing. At the same time, it made me think about a program that we did at UC Santa Barbara, where we had an international student teaching exchange program. So it's the student teachers in UC Santa Barbara, some of them, a group of them, would go off to other countries and student teach for a month, and we would host student teachers from there. Because all teachers couldn't engage in that, we had also an opportunity for regional or other places, what we called alternative placements. And the whole point behind that is it became very successful because teachers came back, new teachers came back with a different perspective, opportunities to see different ways of educating that they hadn't ever seen before. One of the endemic challenges to teacher preparation is that almost all of us have been students. And so when we're trying to shift from we know school because we've been in school to we are now becoming teachers and see school in a different way, something that we call the apprenticeship of observation challenge. It's critically important that if we're preparing teachers in K-12 schools in practice-based kinds of ways, that we're also offering multiple opportunities to see all sorts of opportunities for educating kids differently.
Thank you. Commissioner Simmons.
Terry's comments about application dates really brought back to my mind several times when advisory boards and interactions between universities and employers have been kind of tense. If you think about like having an induction program, for example, where if you have to apply for a program in February or March and employers don't hire you for positions until sometimes August, it would make it impossible for them to begin their induction program when school started. That would put them a year behind. So that is one of the reasons why, as Carrie said, county offices operated, but then also CSUs, once they understand that, I have at least one CSU which has agreed to change their application date so that they will allow for that once they understood that it was an issue. Another thing that has come up is advisement. When I was in Ventura County, there was a program in another part of the state that was operating in Ventura County where the students were not getting timely advisement. Well, the HR directors all got together and said, we're not going to allow student teachers from that institution until they bring proper advisement to our county. That's where HR can serve as an advocate for the employee, because an individual student doesn't have much clout when it comes to the hierarchy of academia. Another issue came up when classes were taught. I had a university for an admin program, which was offering courses to be in the program, you had to take courses Monday night, Tuesday night, and Wednesday night. Well, for a working adult, that's not reasonable. So the HR directors got together and brought in another university, which would be able to offer them the program, and they did 2 classes both on Monday night. Another situation we had is, this goes back to when RICA was formed, where universities were preparing in one way in terms of like whole language, whereas schools were organized in another way, phonics. Well, that battle got so big that the legislature had to step in and say, this is the way that we're going to deal with it. And another issue we have is with diverse students. A lot of times there are only day programs that are offered. Well, if I'm going to bring people who are first in their family to go to college, who are likely to come from unrepresented groups, I need to be able to have working adults be able to be part of those programs. So it's all of those kind of reasons are why that we have so many programs that are trying to get different niches so that they can be effective. But when I look at the number of programs we have and how many programs that the commission can actually oversee, I think we're past the tipping point. And we probably need to have fewer programs, but have more authentic collaboration between K-12 and preparation.
Welcome, Commissioner Martin. Do we have any other comments on this item, commissioners? As always, this has been a wonderfully robust discussion. This is an information action item. Does the commission have, do I have a motion to accept the proposed revised language for the initial program preconditions and the suggested options to modify these preconditions?
Commissioner Rodriguez, I don't think we need a motion at this point. I think staff has heard the conversation. I think we need to go out and get stakeholder feedback through a survey, possibly even talk with some stakeholder groups, and that this could come back to you sometime this fall after we've done that work.
Excellent. Okay.
I'm nodding as well, and so is Terry, that the stakeholders' voices here are yeah, let's do that.
All right. Commissioner Sloan, would you like to say something in closing?
Yeah, just I appreciate that, Terry. That's a great suggestion, because I do think we need more to look at this. So the other part to all of this is COA. Naturally, our Committee on Accreditation has lots to offer in thinking about this too, because part of it is something that Commissioner Simmons brought up. We have a great many programs right now. Do we have the capacity to truly oversee and accredit everyone in the way that they need to be? And that was one reason I brought up the question yesterday about, now that we're holding these virtual site visit meetings, how effective is that? I think we have to weigh these more authentic collaboration piece, practice-based teacher preparation, and our capacity to oversee everything, and perhaps new ways of doing that oversight.
Okay. Does anyone have any other comments before we move on to our next item? No? All right. Ms. Gutierrez and Ms. Betty, I hope that you have enough information to continue moving forward. And thank you so much. Does anybody need to take a break? No? We're good to move on to item 2D. And this is item 2D, the update on the work of the Bilingual Authorization Work Group. This item is being presented by Iyor Osamwani and Miranda Gutierrez. Welcome back, Ms. Gutierrez. Will you please begin?
Yes, good morning and thank you. So as I mentioned, this agenda item is an update on the subject matter expert panel selected to work on and update the Bilingual Authorization Program standards. The current bilingual authorization standards were last adopted in 2009, and the staff work plan included updating those standards in 2022. However, with the policy shift over the last 4 years, such as Prop 58 and the Global 2030 Initiative, advocates from the bilingual community expressed the need to review and revise the current standards earlier than the planned timeline of 2022. So in order to help facilitate this work, a group of bilingual stakeholders formed an informal working group known as the Bilingual Standards Refresh Work Group. And this work group was led by Magali Lavandes at Loyola Marymount University. So what this work did was, prior to an official panel being convened, this work group worked together to analyze the current bilingual authorization standards and kind of tease out what might need to be updated. So their work with that culminated in a content analysis white paper, which is linked in the agenda item. And they worked and discussed this over 2018 and 2019. So in that content analysis paper, they analyzed each of the current standards and provided their recommendations of what they thought might need to stay within the standards or might need to be updated. This content analysis paper was actually provided to the official panel that was convened and met, and they will have it available throughout their work. So going back to that content analysis paper again, it analyzed each of the program standards, and one of the overall recommendations from that paper was the addition of bilingual teaching performance expectations, or BTPEs. And this recommendation actually aligns with the structure of the Commission's current preliminary and pupil personnel services credentials. So as the bilingual standards refresh work group was reviewing and analyzing the standards, during that time, last September, staff presented an agenda item that shared the work plan for the standards update work. And so now EORA will tell you a little bit about the panel application and selection process.
Thank you, Miranda. In November 2019, the Commission published the work group application for the Bilingual Authorization Program standards. Applicants were required to submit an online survey application, a resume, and short answers to 2 open-ended questions. A total of 98 survey responses were received by the due date, and Table 1 on page 2 shows specific numbers of the application status. Of the 98 survey responses that were received, 52 applications were complete and 46 were incomplete. A review of all 52 completed applications identified 14 applicants who were recommended by staff and appointed by Executive Director Mary Sandy. In addition to the 14 appointed panel members, 11 members were appointed as liaisons from the key stakeholder groups and the California Department of Education. A full list of the selected panel members and liaisons can be found in Appendix A. So moving on to the data summary of the panel members. Commission staff analyzed the demographic data that was collected from the survey application responses. Overall, the members have a substantial amount of years of practice in the K-12 system. The members are also from diverse backgrounds, and their known languages other than English include Spanish, French, Korean, Chinese, Hmong, Italian, Portuguese, and Russian. Additionally, the appointees consist of representatives from the local education agencies, institution of higher education, and interest groups. They also represent different California regions covering the Central Valley, Bay Area, the North and Central Coast, and SoCal. At this time, Miranda will report on the panel work to date.
Yes, so the panel held its first meeting May 28th to 29th, and that was held virtually. During that panel, they were provided their charge for the work group, which is on page 3 to 4 of the agenda item. And during that first meeting, panel members had an opportunity to meet and collaborate with the other panel members. Staff coordinated 2 breakout activities, which included the panel members reviewing the current bilingual authorization standards and identifying areas of those standards that, in their opinion, needed to remain but be updated or maybe need to be eliminated. And in addition to the breakout activities, we did have a presentation by Magali Lavandes and others who worked on that content analysis white paper. So the panel had a broad overview of that paper going into the meeting, and they will also have it available to them as they continue their work on their upcoming meetings. And EORA is just going to talk about our next steps for the work.
So for next steps, future panel meetings are scheduled for July 23rd through 24th and September 10th through 11th. The panel will continue to analyze the current standards and provide draft revisions for the group to review. When the draft standards are ready, staff will bring them to the commission for discussion. This concludes the item. This is an information item. No action is needed. We are happy to answer any questions you may have. Also, we have Magali Lavandes, a panel member from the Refresh Work Group, who is available to answer questions specific to the content of the analysis paper. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We will now open for public comment. Recording Secretary, are there any public comments?
Yes, first we have Sharon Merritt. Please state your name and affiliation for the record.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Sharon Merritt, President of the California Association for Bilingual Teacher Education and Faculty of Teacher Education at Fresno Pacific University. First of all, COBTE stands joyfully and hopefully with all our DACA dreamers in light of the historic ruling yesterday in their favor, and looks forward to the day when Congress will finalize their status among us. However, today I'm here to speak in affirmation of the work of the Bilingual Authorization Working Group and expert panel, and to express COBTE's support of their work in examining the current bilingual authorization standards for a refresh. I would also like to draw your attention to the important role that COBTE members and officers have played and continue to play in this process. As an organization, COBTE is proud to be so well represented in this important effort. While we're interested in the outcomes of the work of the expert panel in many areas of the bilingual authorization standards, in particular today, I'd like to highlight our desire to see the standards include robust requirements for bilingual field placement for all language groups, including the lesser taught languages. We hope that all bilingual authorization programs will provide opportunities for pre-service and in-service teachers pursuing the authorization to receive supervised practice in bilingual classroom settings. That's the end of my comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Recording Secretary, do we have any other public comments?
Ivania Soto, please state your name and affiliation for the record.
My name is Ivania Soto, and I am a professor at Whittier College, but I'm providing public comment on behalf of CABE, the California Association for Bilingual Education. And like my colleague, Sharon, we think it's a great day to be advocating for bilingual teacher candidates in California after yesterday's ruling on DACA. On behalf of CABE, we are in support of the Bilingual Authorization Standards Content Analysis paper, as well as the progress of the Bilingual Standards Refresh Group. And we look forward to the continued progress of the expert panel moving forward. CABE also appreciates that the CTC staff continues to collaborate with both CABE and COBTE regarding resolving issues for bilingual teacher candidates with the CalTPA. And we encourage CTC staff to continue to find ways to make the CalTPA a more appropriate assessment for bilingual candidates. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments?
No, we have no further comments.
Okay, thank you. So public comment for this item is now closed. Commissioners, any comments or questions?
Commissioner Rodriguez, could I interject that Dr. Lavandes is with us in the meeting now? If you would let her maybe say a few things about the white paper and the work they did as the precursor work to the panel.
Okay, excellent. Is she on the, oh, there you, okay, there you are. Hello, welcome.
Thank you so much. Good morning, commissioners, Ms. Clark, Dr. Sandy, and members of the audience. And wonderful to see all of you today. Wonderful to listen also, in addition to the celebration of the Supreme Court ruling on DACA, that hearing about the commission's intent around innovation and equity on this day of Juneteenth as a commemoration of freedom and democracy that we must continue to work towards in the preparation of all educators in the state of California. So it's an auspicious day. I want to also appreciate the work of the commission in terms of the responsiveness this idea of field initiated and CTC responsiveness in both requests from the field for the acceleration of the refresh of the standards, as well as for engagement with the field. We are fortunate enough at the Center for Equity for English Learner, where I serve as the executive director, the founder of our bilingual teacher preparation programs at Loyola Marymount University, and as a faculty member in the Department of Education and Leadership, to be able to have obtained some funding for the second prong of our work. So you have the white paper in front of you. That was the first prong of our work at our center, in collaboration with the various organizations that you've heard from as well. The working group panel was really a representation purposefully nominated to represent our bilingual teacher profession preparers across the state from a variety of UCs, CSUs, and language groups, as well as private universities. And we sought to do this work in earnest to really support this, this work in terms of the refresh. Miranda, Terry, and Mary Sandy were really instrumental in having that conversation of what that meant in terms of a two-pronged approach. First, the acceleration, and then engagement with the field. So as part of the second part of our engagement, we are also right in the midst, even though we are in this very midst of the pandemic and distance teaching, of engaging with the field and soliciting information through a statewide survey that will help district leaders and school site leaders let us know, as bilingual teacher preparers across a variety of institutions, what they desire, what they're seeing as knowledge, skills, and abilities. So that second prong is underway right now in terms of the statewide survey of the field that we hope to bring forth to our expert panel. I am fortunate to have been selected to the expert panel, appreciated for the engagement with the field. I served on the original panel in 2009, and that work was cutting edge work. And we hope to continue to have cutting edge work in the preparation of our bilingual educators in the state of California. And thank you so much for this opportunity to address you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lavandez. Do we have, we closed public comment, and now we'll open it up for discussion for our commissioners. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments on this item? Commissioner Martinez?
Figured it out. Yeah, I was just curious about the next steps from here. What are the next steps from this report that the panel is going to take, or CTC?
So I can speak a little bit to that. So the next steps, we have 2 more meetings scheduled on the calendar right now. We may be adding, we're likely to add a 4th because the first one was supposed to be in April, but we canceled that just with everything going on. So we're working on the agenda for the July meeting. And so what that'll include, I mentioned we had some breakout activities for the panel members. So staff has actually been working on combining all of that data so we can share their work at the upcoming meeting and look at how they are looking at the standards and what they think needs to be revised and edited. We'll be hearing from some of our regulation staff because as these standards go through, we'll have to put them through the regulations process. But right now, our intentions are just to meet as with the panel, have them really start to look at the standards and then start making the revisions so that we can bring the future item of possible standards for adoption to you all and get them through field review as well. I hope that kind of provides some context of where the direction we're heading.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I would add that we tentatively have bringing the standards back to you late, maybe December of this year for information. Stakeholder input will be gathered, and then sometime early in 21, possible adoption of the standards.
Great. Thank you for the timeline too, Terry.
Commissioner Simmons?
I just want to say that this is a remarkable panel. This is an amazing group of people, and whoever is responsible for putting it together, Mary, did a wonderful job.
Thank you for
I,
that
I
comment.
wish I could take credit.
Commissioner Brown and then Commissioner Sloan.
I think this really shows the priority for our people in our state. And I'm particularly appreciative of this since the majority of community college students entering at least early childhood and elementary and special ed have home languages, have a real diversity of home languages. So this focus on dual language learning and ESL is critical, and it'll help us as the early childhood field moves into the work of TPEs over time. So thank you. Good timing.
Commissioner Sloan.
I'll build on the excitement of the work and the panel. It is very exciting. But the other part that really excites me is what a different world we're in now than Magali when you were on the panel back in 2009. And this idea of it's not just about supporting students for whom English is a second language, but really promoting bilingualism and biliteracy throughout our schools. And what an exciting opportunity for all students to be able to speak more than one language and learn in that way. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that part that's in this work that is very exciting. The second thing being about the statewide survey of the field. That seems really important. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes of that. And I want to see where people are, in our K-12 schools, and thinking about how they are going to grow this work in biliteracy and bilingualism. And it makes me think about the comment that Dr. Merritt gave about ensuring that we have robust placements for student teachers who are working in these areas, and that is really critical. And I think both the field and preparation programs are needing to grow simultaneously. And so having engagement and involvement from the field seems very important. The last thing I will say is I appreciate in the item that we have the demographics of the panel members. I think that's very important to know. And one question I had was if it says originally we had 98 survey responses, and of those 46 applicants didn't complete the application. I was wondering, did you identify a place in the process where applicants stopped? For instance, was there a particular question that they went, ooh, not for me, or this isn't what I thought, or any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can answer that question. So the first part of the application was to fill out the online survey responses. So upon filling out the responses, applicants needed to email their resume and answers to the short questions. So what we saw was that the applicants stopped at just the survey and never turned in the second half of the application.
Do you think that is because they simply wanted to participate in the survey but not actually serve on the panel, or did any thoughts, or did they miss that they needed to send in their resume to do it? Just curious.
I can speak to that a little bit. So the survey was just to collect basic information, contact information. And within the survey, I think in 2 places we noted that an application and the resume was also required. And then as we started approaching the application deadline, we sent several follow-up emails to let folks know that they had completed the first half, but they still had to complete the second half, and we provided the information and questions again. And so I don't know if it was just a miscommunication or if folks didn't have those prepared in time for the deadline.
And also, just to add on to Miranda, we also extended the deadline as to January 10th. It was previously later, and we pushed it out.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you reached out, you did what you could. So I just want to say how excited I am to see how this work progresses. And I agree with Commissioner Simmons. It's a incredible panel.
Dr. Lavades, would you like to publicly make the comment that you just made?
Yes, absolutely. I put in the chat box, I did not want to neglect the working groups, the refresh working groups appreciation of the support and advice from both Miranda Gutierrez and Iorio Somangwi for the ongoing work. We had meetings along the way where we invited Miranda to join us to say, are we on track? Please provide us any additional information, to just have those check-in meetings and those time and the access and their availability to engage with us as an unofficial group is very much appreciated.
Thank you for that. Commissioners, do you have any other comments on this item? See, let me scroll here and look for digital hands or hands with digits. Okay, so as we move along, I just want to express my excitement as someone who loves languages and understands that language is power, and how important it is to create a multilingual society, not only for what it does for the brain, but for cultural understanding. So thank you so much for this work. It's very exciting. That said, having no further commissioner comments or questions, this is an information item and no further action is needed on this. So we will move on to our next item. And Dr. Lavandez, again, thank you so much for your work. Commissioner Sloan, I saw your hand with digits go up.
Yeah, I was wondering if we could take a short break before our next item.
Absolutely. I was going to ask if you were all ready for a break. So it's 9:54. Is 10 o'clock okay? 6 minutes? Or is that too little? Yeah. Okay. Seen some heads nodding. All right. So we'll see you in 6 minutes. So actually 10:01. Okay. I think we're all back. Yes? All right. So we are moving on to item 2F, initial institutional approval, stage 3. Consideration of provisional approval for Yuba City Unified School District. This item is being presented by Poonam Betty, and this is an action item. Ms. Betty, will you please begin?
Yes. Good morning again, commissioners. Can you all still hear me?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Wonderful. Item 2F presents the Yuba City Unified School District's responses to Stage 3 of the initial institutional approval process for the Commission's consideration and a possible provisional approval. The 5 stages of the IA process are provided in the chart on page 2, with the current stage highlighted. As a reminder, although provisional approval authorizes the institution to offer the proposed program, the program must still go through the initial program review process to determine alignment with the program standards. The Yuba City Unified School District's proposed teacher induction program will then be brought before the Committee on Accreditation, who may approve or deny the program. Representing the Yuba City Unified School District, we have with us today Pamela Rungzabe, the Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, Cindy Gappa, Consultant, and Martin Ramirez, Secondary Education and CTE Coordinator. They will be available to answer any programmatic questions you may have. As I mentioned earlier, the Yuba City Unified School District is proposing a teacher induction program. They've submitted responses to the initial program preconditions and the teacher induction preconditions. The link to the full response to these preconditions is on page 3 of the item. The summaries of the responses to the preconditions are provided on pages 4 through 7 of the item. Review of the precondition submission was completed by Commission staff, and these preconditions have been found to be met. In addition to the preconditions, responses to the common standards were submitted. The link to the full response to the common standards is also provided on page 3. And from pages 8 through 15, you'll find excerpts from the common standards response. Review of the Common Standards submission was completed by a team of BIR members, and this team collaborated and came to a consensus of aligned on all of the common standards. Based on the findings of met for all relevant preconditions and aligned for all the common standards, staff would like to recommend provisional approval for the Yuba City Unified School District. It is recommended that the provisional approval be set for a period of 3 years so that in the 3rd year, a site visit can occur and data can be collected. After a site visit, a report will be completed and brought before the Commission for full approval, which is the final stage of the IIA process. Staff is happy to answer any process questions, and again, we have representatives from the Yuba City Unified School District available to answer any questions you may have about the Stage 3 submission or the proposed induction program. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Betty. We'll now open for public comment. Recording Secretary, are there any public comments on this item?
There are no public comment requests for this item.
Okay, so having no public comments, we will now close the public comment section and we'll open it up for commissioners. Do you have any comments or questions? Commissioner Sloan?
Thank you. I was reading how you all will be working, let's see, you'll be meeting on a quarterly basis with your partners. It was stated here that the Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, the Induction Program Coordinator, the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, at least one school administrator, at least one mentor, and at least 2 recent program participants will meet quarterly and review program effectiveness data. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit more about what that would look like and what the program effectiveness data is.
Okay. So, well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us today. The program data specifically will look at feedback from teachers that work with the participating teacher, their mentors, the administrators, a lot of survey data, plus information back from the candidate themselves, and student data as well for that student. So it'll be a combination of a lot of survey input as well as student success data and input from the mentor and the candidate themselves.
And then do you have a sense of what you anticipate doing in these quarterly meetings with that data?
A lot of collaboration. The key is around collaborating needs of the teacher and needs of the students. When the teacher's needs are being met, we know that the students' needs will be met. So the idea is that we will seek a lot of input on how those teachers' needs are being met, what additional support we can provide, ensure that that is made available to them, and seek feedback on how the candidate feels we are supporting them and what more we could do to ensure their success.
So these meetings are not just sort of after the fact, they are while the candidate is engaged.
Commissioner Sloan, you froze for a moment there.
Did I freeze for a moment? Shoot.
Yes,
Here I am.
Question. Thank you.
At the university. So my question was, so I think what I'm hearing then is these quarterly meetings are happening while new teachers are engaged in induction. So it's not just after the fact what we're going to change next year, but it's in the moment what we are going to change for these particular candidates as they're engaged in the program. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. Yes, that is the idea, that it would be ongoing support for the candidate in a quarterly manner so that we can adjust as we go. We wouldn't, we want to model what we would want our teachers to do for our students. Mm-hmm. So that's what we want to do for our model that behavior and how our teachers supporting them, how they could support their students, the same idea.
Great.
Any other questions, commissioners? Commissioner de la Torre Escobedo.
Hello, good morning. I actually have a question in terms of the communication with the institutions of higher education. I'm looking at page 11 of the item, and it states that the induction program coordinator will communicate with these institutions to better track a teacher candidate's preliminary program and link it to their induction program. Can you explain a little more what that will look like and what you plan on doing there?
I can address that. Good morning, commissioners. It's Cindy Gappa here. What we are expecting is to make better use of the independent development plan, which is expected at the end of the preliminary program. Currently, we don't see that document coming with the majority of candidates. And so we believe that if we have better communication with those programs, that we can make better use of that document so that the transition is more authentic and more aligned, so that when the candidate engages in their induction process, it is building on preliminary practice, not duplicating it.
Thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners? Commissioner Sloan?
So I found that last comment very concerning, that you have a large number of new teachers coming to your induction or coming to your programs without an individual development plan.
Go ahead. Am I still live?
Yep.
They may have it, but often they don't know that they have it, and therefore it's not as useful as we might hope.
Right. So I think this is just for our own information as a commission, that this, especially for our 2020 graduates, we said this was critically important that they were working on these with their programs to identify their specific needs going into the fall. I know it's not directly related to approval of Yuba City Unified program, but it raised a red flag for me. Terry,
I share your concerns.
And Terry, you can
yes,
respond.
Chair Sloan, we heard this over a year ago, and so we put a program sponsor alert out to all preliminary, multiple subject, single subject, and education specialist programs to remind them of the program standard requirement that every candidate who leaves a preliminary program has an individual development plan to take to their induction program, which will help frame that first individual learning plan that they work on. We are reminding everyone, we've reminded people in webinars this year also. I have to say, though, it is concerning. We had a question from a program, a special ed program says, we've never done this, we don't need to do this. And the response back to them had to be, yes, it's here in this standard. Yes, you do need to do this. So we are reminding programs, and we have really emphasized that this year it is essential. Those people on program sponsor variable term waivers with the preliminary with the TPA or the RECA. So we are making this very clear, and we will even add it to the PSD news as a reminder.
Commissioner Escobedo, de la Torre Escobedo, did you have another question?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, Chair Sloan, that is why I asked the question, just because that's what I'm seeing out, in the field in terms of that missing link between, and just making sure that our teacher candidates have that transition and that document follows them in order for them to grow and successfully complete their induction program.
Thank you. Commissioner Grenault-Shire.
I share the concerns that have been lifted up during this time, and this has nothing to do with the Yuba City application. I just want to be really clear about that. I think it's quite well written. I'm wondering if the commissioners, if we could devote some time at our next meeting to talk about this and the handoff between our preparation programs and our district partner induction programs, especially in this coming year. We've talked before about how critical this is. This raises a big red flag for me. So I would like to request that we do that as soon as possible.
Commissioner Sloan.
Thank you. I would also agree with Commissioner Grenault-Shire. This is very well written. And one of the things that I am always curious about is the support of mentors, the selection of mentors, and also just the daily work of mentors and how that works. And I noticed you will have some fully released mentors who will be providing support to non-released mentors. And I just wondered if you could just give us sort of a sense of, you know, in a school, how does it work for non-released mentors? How does it work for released mentors? What does it actually will it look like in practice?
Sure. We want some full release mentors because it really provides it provides for some real consistency of practice and setting expectations for those teachers. Unfortunately, that doesn't work when you get up into some of the very specific credentials in high school. So it allows us to kind of have the best of both worlds. When you have your full release mentors, they can work with a number of teachers and pull collaborative groups and do a number of powerful things, walk classrooms together, and really do some powerful things. But when you get up into high school and you're talking about credentials specifically in math, first of all, we have so few math teachers, we could never pull anyone out of the classroom to just do that. So we really need those classroom teachers with the specific credential to work with our new candidates. And so that's the idea, is to have just those single subject credentials work in that non-release model, and our full release be more of the multiple subject. Now, in terms of how it will work for those single subject teachers, it's we will provide, as we've always done, even in our existing work with our induction program, they will have access to sub-release time and offer opportunities for them to observe, offer opportunities for them to observe together in a classroom of another teacher. And they will do some side-by-side work and some modeling within the candidate's classroom. All of those opportunities will be made available to them.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions or comments? Okay. So this is an action item. Do I have a motion to either grant provisional approval to Yuba City Unified School District and set the provisional approval period to be 3 years, or deny provisional approval? Commissioner Sloan, did you raise your hand?
Yes, so moved.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. So we have a motion made by Commissioner Sloan, seconded by Commissioner de la Torre Escobedo, and we will call for a vote. Recording Secretary?
Kirsten Barnes.
Aye.
C. Michael Cooney.
Aye.
Marisol de la Torre Escobedo.
Aye.
Johanna Harwick,
Aye.
Alicia Hine,
Aye.
Harry Jackson,
Aye.
Kevin Quinn,
Aye.
Jane Marks,
Aye.
Cynthia Martin,
Aye.
Monica Martinez,
Aye.
Ade Rodriguez,
Aye.
David Simmons,
Aye.
Tina Sloan.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Can I, as a point of clarification, for the record, I think when Commissioner Rodriguez was saying what we could do, I don't think it was clear what the motion, I know we all know that we were voting to approve, but I think what you said was, do we have a motion to approve or to deny?
Yes.
So clarify that.
Thank you so much for that. Yes, thanks for catching that. So motion carries, and it is a motion to grant provisional approval to Yuba City Unified School District and set the provisional approval period to be 3 years. Thank you. Okay, so we are.
Could I make one final general closing comment?
Sure.
I wanted to thank Chair Sloan and Mary Vixie Sandy and the leadership of the commission and its staff for how proud I am of their leadership, not only in this time, but over time. Some of the best folks are working at the commission. So thank you for your leadership.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we will move on to item 2E, which is our last item for the Educator Preparation Committee. And item 2E is update on the work relating to child development permit. Where's Commissioner Brown? Okay, all right. I'm sure you were waiting for this one. This item is being presented by Phyllis Jacobson. This is an information item. Ms. Jacobson, will you please begin?
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. This agenda item presents a summary of the work to date regarding the child development permit and provides an update on current and future work. Now, the context for the Commission's work in this area is highly complex. There's a multitude of different funding streams, requirements, and federal, state, and local agencies, each of which has some part of regulating the field of early care and education. There are multiple stakeholder groups, agencies, and entities with a deeply rooted interest in this work. The Commission is responsible for the permitting of individuals working in Title V regulated programs. These are the state contracted and state funded child care and development programs funded through the California Department of Education, or the CDE. The workforce and settings and programs licensed by the Department of Social Services under Title 22 and those serving in federally funded Head Start programs may also obtain child development permits. Table 1 on page 5 of the item illustrates the differences between these types of programs and their requirements. The child development permit was originally developed in 1961 and was most recently updated in 1994 with Title V regulations promulgated in 1997. In 2015, in response to legislation, the Commission undertook a review of the permit structure to potentially update the permit levels and requirements. The current permit structure is based primarily on coursework units and titles. Recently, however, we've been working with the field to reorient and refocus preparation for the permit to align with identified candidate competencies as the foundation for coursework and for practicum. And we've been working to identify the characteristics of quality preparation programs for this workforce. More about this work in just a minute. The child development permit currently has 6 levels. These are associate, assistant teacher, teacher, master teacher, site supervisor, and program director. Each of these levels is explained on pages 2 through 4 of the item, as well as what each level of the permit authorizes the holder to do, and what the initial qualification and renewal requirements are for that level of the permit. Appendix A provides this information in a single table. A Approximately 6,500 new child development permits are issued annually, as shown in Appendix B. The majority of these are in the categories of associate teacher, teacher, and site supervisor. All segments of the higher education system prepare this workforce, including the community colleges, the CSU, the UC, and private and independent colleges and universities. The community colleges and some of the CSUs use a curriculum developed through what's known as the Curriculum Alignment Project, or CAP, which has been funded as part of the support for the workforce from the CDE. Other four-year institutions have developed their own ECE curriculum. All of these curricula have largely been anchored in the CDE's preschool early learning foundations. This is an extensive compendium of curriculum and instruction for young children in early care and learning settings. Qualifying for the associate teacher permit now requires the candidate to complete 12 coursework units. These are typically the first 3 foundation courses of Child, Family, and Community, Introduction to Curriculum, and Child Growth and Development. The remaining foundational courses, comprising the 24 units for the teacher level, have typically been Principles and Practices of Teaching Young Children, Observation and Assessment, Health, Safety, and Nutrition, Teaching in a Diverse Society, and Practicum. The Commission's recent work to help move the preparation system from focusing on units and course titles to focusing instead on the development and demonstration of candidate competencies needed to effectively perform the job function of an early childhood teacher or administrator began with the work of the Commission's Child Development Permit Advisory Panel. Until the Commission's recent adoption in 2019 of ECE teaching performance expectations for all levels of the permit and program guidelines for the preparers of this workforce, there have not previously been statewide competency-based expectations for the workforce reflected in the preparation for the permit, and there have not been guidelines for the quality of ECE preparation programs. So the Child Development Advisory Panel met from 2015 through early 2017. The membership of this panel is provided in Appendix C. Information on how the work to develop and adopt the TPEs and the program guidelines took place and how the field was involved in this work is described on pages 9 through 12 of the agenda item. The advisory panel also made recommendations to the Commission regarding potential changes to the permit structure, as shown in Appendix D. These changes were put on hold at the time because of significant divisions in the field concerning the proposed changes and their perceived effects on the preparation and supply of qualified personnel, and also because the Commission directed staff to focus on further developing and engaging with stakeholders regarding the TPEs and the program guidelines, and then to revisit the permit structure following this work. The work on potential revisions to the permit structure is now awaiting information from the work of the Governor's Master Plan Committee, which is developing a new statewide blueprint for early care and education. The recommendations from the Master Plan Committee are expected in fall 2020. In terms of current and future work, there are a number of efforts underway. The CAP leadership has been working to review the CAP coursework to align preparation with the new ECE TPEs. Some of the areas for increased focus within preparation is an increased emphasis on dual language learners, on the care and development of infants and toddlers, and on how to work effectively with families as well as other adults within the ECE setting. The CAP leadership is also interested in working with Commission staff to look at how to embed some competency-based assessments within coursework to help support candidate development of the TPEs and to provide feedback to candidates and programs. Other four-year institutions are also looking at their coursework as well to review alignment with the TPEs. Staff will be looking to work with interested workforce preparer institutions to pilot the TPEs and the program guidelines over the next year or two. In addition, this year, the Commission was invited to join in the CDE's Federal Professional Development Grant Renewal, otherwise known as the PDGR, application, which was
successful in receiving additional funding. The CDE had originally applied for this professional development grant several years ago to help support their statewide efforts in ECE curriculum development and professional development. But these activities did not involve work relating to the Commission. However, the Commission was included in the renewal application for this grant to help support the transition to competency-based preparation and embedded performance assessment. The renewal grant is a 3-year grant with the possibility of extending to a 4th year as needed to complete the work. The Commission's portion of the funding is a total of $3 million over the funding period to accomplish 2 major activities. The first of these is to work on developing a teaching performance assessment for the early childhood workforce at the teacher level of the permit. This TPA will be used initially as a formative embedded assessment within programs to help provide feedback to candidates and programs as they transition to competency-based instruction. This assessment will not be required in the near future for obtaining the permit, but it will serve to help inform candidates and programs about progress towards meeting the adopted TPEs. And the second major activity will be to work with the field to develop a quality review process for programs, most likely a peer review process, to provide a framework so that programs can be approved to submit candidate recommendations for the permit. In the past, there has not been a program approval system based on the quality of the preparation provided, and the permit has been granted largely based on transcripts documenting the appropriate coursework. The Commission has neither the staff nor the resources to include the child development programs in the full accreditation system, but will work with the field to develop a feasible and a credible process to assure the quality of preparation provided to candidates and allow programs to directly recommend candidates for the permit. In addition to the PDGR grant, the Commission is also a partner in a brand new grant application to the Early Educator Investment Collaborative, or the EEIC, some more alphabet soup for you. This is a philanthropically funded group interested in supporting effective, inclusive, culturally, linguistically, and developmentally appropriate preparation for the early care and education workforce. California as a state put together a collaborative of 3 CSU campuses. These are Sacramento State, Cal Poly Pomona, and CSU Bakersfield. The Educator Quality Office from the CSU Chancellor's Office, the CAP Project, and the Commission to focus on the preparation of the ECE workforce. This work is intended to complement and extend the Commission's work being done under the PDGR grant by focusing primarily on support for the participating 4-year institutions, as well as the 2-year institutions, to transform ECE preparation to a competency-based and performance-oriented system of coursework and targeted fieldwork and practicum. We're doing this so that candidates can learn, practice, be assessed on, and master the adopted TPEs for their job role, and also to provide support for those who will be piloting the ECE performance assessment activities and tasks as these are developed over the project period. This EIC grant application is kind of complicated. It's a 2-step process. We submitted an initial application. It was 95 pages worth of initial application, and we have just been notified that the application has been advanced to the 2nd step of the the process. So given all that has happened with the COVID-19 situation, the EEIC is giving us some extra time for all of the 2nd step applicants to revise the initial plans submitted before the pandemic, and has pushed back the submission deadline to late August. So we're very pleased to have made it past the 1st step, and now we have lots more work to do to revise and resubmit our application. If we're successful, the Commission would receive an additional $300,000 over the 2 years to support the work relating to the child development permit. As we're all aware, the COVID-19 situation has greatly affected the early care and learning community. It's not known at this time how many settings will be able to remain open or in what format services may be provided to young children within those programs that are able to continue operating and offer services. This factor affects the ability of ECE permit candidates, similar to the situation of K-12 candidates, to accomplish their fieldwork and experience requirements. We are attending ongoing meetings with ECE stakeholder groups to monitor this fluid situation. And as you heard in agenda item 1H yesterday, we will be talking directly to stakeholder representatives to see what flexibility, if any, that may be needed and that the Commission might be able to provide. In terms of the very next steps, as shown on page 18 of the item, 5 major activities will be taking place over the next 3 years. These are working with programs to integrate the TPEs within ECE preparation programs coursework and fieldwork. 2, establishing the program guidelines as indicators of program quality and effectiveness for ECE preparation programs. And this will take place within the context of 3, an updated program quality review process, possibly a peer review process, to validate the quality of the preparation being provided to child development permit candidates and allow programs approved within this process to directly recommend candidates. 4th, we will be developing, piloting, and validating a new ECE teaching performance assessment at the teacher level of the permit that will be used primarily and initially as a formative assessment tool embedded within preparation programs to help move this field towards competency-based assessment. And 5, we will be then looking to determine any potential changes to the current child development permit structure for future Commission discussion and potential action, as will be guided by the work of the state's master plan committee once their report has been made available. So staff will continue to provide updates to the Commission as this work evolves. This concludes my presentation, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Phyllis, Dr. Jacobson. We will open up for public comment, and I'll also like you to note that we do have some written public comments attached to our agenda item. One is from Dr. Cepeda at Cal State University, Los Angeles, and another from Peach. And so, Recording Secretary, do we have any public comments at this time?
Yes, Nancy Hurlbut, please state your name and affiliation for the record.
Can you hear me now? Okay, great. So I'm Nancy Hurlbut. I'm chair of the Early Childhood Studies Department at Cal Poly Pomona, and I'm also a member of PEACH, a Higher Ed Early Childhood Collaborative. First off, I want to thank Mary Sandy and the Commission for their very insightful and thoughtful statements yesterday at the beginning of the meeting about anti-racism. I think it's very important we take a leadership role in that. So thank you. So what I would like to do is make 2 comments on what Phyllis just shared in that wonderful document. The first, a comment before that, I'm really happy to see that we're back to early childhood. You know, with all the other stuff going on, it's just wonderful that we're able to return to it. My very first statement is about the aligning the TPEs with the CAP courses, which I think is absolutely a wonderful first step. And there was a great survey that came out to find out how the field felt about the changes that were made. The problem with the survey is it didn't go out to, I'm not sure who it went out to, but it didn't go out to many of us. For instance, me at Cal Poly did not get it. Now we're not CAP aligned, but we are CAP articulated, meaning that our program is a transfer program that takes these 8 CAP courses directly into our program. So whatever happens to the CAP courses affects our whole program. So to us and to many CSUs and some other community colleges, it would be really important that any survey or any analysis of how the alignment went, that it actually went to all the systems and not just a narrow system. So again, that's just so the survey would be more broad. And I think CTC had something to do with distributing the survey, but I'm not positive about that. The second comment, which is a follow-up from what Phyllis said, which I think it's really wonderful that we have $3 million. And actually, I'm in the EEIC grant with Phyllis, so we just heard about that 2 days ago, and that's very exciting. One of the things I think when we do TPAs that's really important is that we get very broad stakeholder input. And when I say broad, I think we have a tendency to just look at the community colleges because the CAP-aligned is such an essential foundational. But in order to really have a great credential in early childhood, we're going to need to have the 4 years in on it. And so we really need to be sure that we get a broad analysis and that we take real time, because we now have 3 years, I guess, to really come up with great TPAs, to relook at the TPEs, how do they work in the system, and continually do the living document and revising it. So those were the 2 points, and thank you all, and I'm really happy we're back to it.
Thank you. Recording Secretary, do we have any more public comments?
Yes, we do. Latanya Hardy, please state your name and affiliation for the record.
Latanya Hardy, Peach. I'm a faculty member of LA Trade Tech College, Child Development Center. Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the commission staff update on work status related to the CD permit, projected work related to the ECE, TPEs, and consideration of the Child Development Permit Advisory Panel's recommendations submitted in 2017. We also acknowledge the challenges of working in the time of COVID-19 and look forward to continued collaboration. Peach, which includes faculty members from over 80 IHEs in California, remain available to collaborate with the CTC and contribute to the efforts described in Agenda Item 1H in today's CTC meetings and to consider COVID-19 accommodations. Items 1H and 2E suggest related research and policy development, which are areas of Peach expertise. Specifically, Peach can support identification of standard language for induction programs and increase understanding of the impact and implications of COVID-19 new health and safety restrictions as related to ECE programs in ECE, CD practicum, clinical practice, and field experience. We thank the commissioners and the CTC staff for your ongoing commitment to supporting EC, CD preparation programs, and the preparation of EC, CD students to work with California's youngest children and their families in early learning and development programs. We are also grateful for your continuing opportunity you have afforded Peach IHE members to support state goals around EC, CD teacher preparation. Thank you.
Thank you. Recording Secretary, do we have any other public comments?
Carolyn Crolette, please state your name and affiliation for the record.
Good morning. My name is Carolyn Crolette, and I'm Senior Policy Analyst at Early Edge, California. We are extremely pleased to see this work back on the agenda and that efforts for a competency-based early learning teacher preparation system are moving forward. When developing this system, we must not forget the needs of dual language learners who represent 60% of children birth to age 5 in California. We praise the Commission's comments supporting bilingualism and want to remind commissioners that a child's earliest years are where the foundation for bilingualism is set. And at the February 2019 CTC meeting, when this was last on the agenda, we provided input to further embed the needs of DLLs and their families into the TPEs. And it would be helpful to get an update on whether this feedback was incorporated and what the process is to provide additional feedback. Also, as the PDG renewal process moves forward with the ECE teaching performance assessment, it is critical that experts and stakeholders are involved in this process and that DLLs are included in any competency-based system. And finally, we want to ensure that a competency-based early learning teacher preparation system that addresses the needs of dual language learners and their families is included in the Master Plan for Early Learning and Care and in alignment with the California English Learner Roadmap. Thank you so much for the opportunity to provide public comment.
Thank you. Recording Secretary, do we have any more public comment on this item?
Jessica Sacco, please state your name and affiliation for the record.
This is Jessica Sacco representing Children Now. Good morning. I want to first appreciate the Commission for bringing this item to the agenda today for discussion by the Commissioners and for public comment by stakeholders. I especially like to thank Executive Director Sandy for her leadership in this space and helping to secure the funding for the pilot program. In addition to the work of the Commission, there's also critical work taking place in the administration on the development of the Master Plan on Early Learning and Care. Children Now and our partners have been actively involved in the shaping and advancement of the Master Plan as a critical counterpart of this effort. And we look forward to continuing our engagement in that work, as well as the work before the Commission to encourage the rollout of the TPEs, including reviewing the need for better integration of DLL-aligned supports, developing TPE performance-aligned assessments, and ultimately revising the Child Development Permit. And that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comments?
We have no further requests for public comment.
Okay, so having no further public comment, the public comment section for this item is now closed. Commissioners, do you have any comments or questions? Commissioner Brown?
You really want me to start on this? I'm so excited. It's time. It keeps being time. And I can't thank Mary and Phyllis and Terry and Aaron enough to help keep the youngest citizens of our state in our viewpoint. I also am really appreciative of Nancy Hurlbut, Latanga Hardy, Carolyn Crolette, and Jessica Sacco. And one of the things about early childhood, as Phyllis described, is we're very diverse and we need all of us together to move this piece forward. At the same time, that diversity sometimes makes it feel very complicated. Phyllis, you did a remarkable job in trying to make a really broad thing understandable. I can't believe that you can do that. And as someone who's in the weeds regularly, I often need to get that bigger viewpoint. I think that the concerns and interests of being included in our next steps of our various colleagues and agencies is important. I hope there's a time for the two issues that were also written comments to be reviewed by the Commission. So I have some questions. I don't know if you want me to jump into them or circle back around. What do you think?
Go right ahead.
Okay, here we go. I'm a little bit in the weeds here, but the TPEs, the teacher prep performance expectations, that piece of beginning to shift from coursework and units to the same kind of work that we do with all other credentials is critical. And it was done on, and the Child Development Permit has many levels. I think it was really great that they've been done on the 4 levels. My question is, as we work forward with that, will we incorporate the VOC process, or what would the next steps be on that?
Would you like me to answer each question as it's raised?
Probably, because since I have like 5 of them, people will forget what.
Oh, okay.
Sure, please. Thank you, Dr.
Happy-
Jacobson.
I'm happy to do that. I've been taking notes, so I don't lose track of any of these. With respect to the TPEs and the inclusion for the work to develop a replacement for what has been called the VOC process, or the verification of completion, and that's the process that had been used to simply verify that a particular candidate had the appropriate coursework. That work is going to be part of the work that's funded by the 2 development grants that we've gotten, one that we already have in hand and the other one that we are in the second step of applying for. Okay. And that work will be done with the field and with the competency-based system in mind, because that's another piece of this whole competency-based system that makes it function.
Thank you. That's good to know. I wondered, my next question has to do with, and I have my little list here. So the pilot that you're describing, does that still need some clarification and inclusivity? And when and how might that be done?
I'm delighted that you bring that up, because we want to make the opportunity to try out curriculum revisions and implementing the TPEs within preparation available to all interested institutions and programs that would like to take this work on with us. And so we have some support in those grant programs as well as our own staff to getting that process started. We've already had some volunteers. The CAP project as a whole has volunteered to be doing this. As you heard in my report, they have already undertaken the process of looking at the CAP coursework with a view to the TPs. And I know that some of the CSUs have been doing that as well. And so that process is already underway. We've been contacted by others who have heard about this and said, I want to volunteer. Can I participate? And of course, we're happy to have institutions and programs that would like to work with us on this. There will be information going, go ahead. Mary?
No, go ahead and finish, Phyllis. Sorry.
I was going to say there will be information coming to the field. We are just in the beginning stages of organizing this work. We've just gotten our grants, or at least the first grant we've been notified. We're still working on our interagency agreement so that we can have access to those funds and get the project started. So we are actively planning this work. Stay tuned.
I just wanted to add that as we get the work launched, we will be inviting nominations to serve on a design team for the development of the TPA, and also some form of design team or advisory group to advise on the second portion of that grant, which is the program review replacement for the VOC process. So there will be many opportunities for the field to be engaged in advising this work directly and in advising and providing feedback as the work develops and goes out for field review.
Okay, I've got a couple more questions. Thank you. So, and this is doing a little backup. So the work group had some outstanding issues around the revision of the child development permit. So my next question is there any place in this next work where that will be looked and forwarded or completed?
Yes, that's one of the steps that's listed in the next steps, but I believe it's the last step because we are waiting for information forthcoming from the Governor's Master Plan Committee. We want our work to be in sync with that. We want to follow the direction of the state. And so we need that information in order to resume looking at our efforts to revise the child development permit structure. So that's in the list. It might be in position number 5, but that's only because of timing here.
You know, Phyllis and I are sort of playing this tennis because she just served me up my next question, my next question, which is tricky, and I hope that I articulate it well enough. You know, the master plan and the master plan group has a range of representation and at the same time, not strong representation from teacher prep institutions in ECE or the commission. So I have some concerns and I don't really know how to describe it or how to get through it. Where is teacher prep or the commission connected with the master plan development? In other words, being part of the development of the process rather than just responding to what other people say.
The commission itself does not have membership on the master plan committee. However, and I see Mary will probably want to add to this, but we have been in, excuse me, we've been in communication with those who are, or some of those who are working on the master plan, because they are also participating in the PDGR grant and have been partnering with us on the EEIC preparations. And so we've remained in touch with those individuals, although we do not have a direct role on the master plan committee itself. And Mary looks like she's leaning forward here.
I just wanted to say that there are probably far more people interested in serving on the master plan committee than there was space to have that service. But we're very glad that Deborah Stipek is a member of that group, and she's working specifically on the teacher quality end of things, and she brings that expertise as the chair of our advisory panel on this work. She certainly brings the work we've been doing and that she has helped us to do over the last several years into the perspective of the group. And she has her own, of course, long research agenda in early childhood education and work as a professor at Stanford to bring to bear on it. So we are, while we wouldn't mind being at the table, we're very glad to know that they have experts like Deborah at the table who can bring this perspective to bear. And we're eager for their report as it comes out early this fall to help us shape what our next steps will be.
I have one more comment or question about that, and I really appreciate what you've been saying. And in fact, I know that Dr. Stipek is on the committee and has been working hard. I'm in communication with that, and I understand that. One thing I need to bring up for all of us to be aware of is that certainly part of the master plan is to move some of the early childhood education into early childhood health and human services. One of the complexities of early childhood education is that we are committed to serving children and their families, and the issues around health and human services matter. At the same time, the educational piece and the teacher preparation for providing education as well as care is a concern if the educational piece and the teacher preparation piece becomes overshadowed by other matters. So it's a comment rather than a question, but I think we all need to be aware of that because the work that we're doing in preparing teachers and bringing early childhood into the credentialing system is so important, and I don't want us to lose it. You heard every comment that was excited about it coming back to us, and I hope we don't lose it. So with that, that's my comment, and I don't have other questions, but I would like to have the issues of the written comments be addressed.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Commissioners, do we have any other questions, comments? Commissioner Martinez.
You're just calling on me so the dogs will stop barking. We'll stop.
Yes, that was my plan.
Loud bark for such small dogs, Commissioner Rodriguez. Yeah, I just have a quick question. On page 16 and 17, and Phyllis, you talked about the need for these preparation programs to voluntarily participate in the piloting program guidelines, and you've talked about the challenges with COVID-19. So I'm wondering if there's anything CTC can do that would encourage or incentivize programs to participate early on in these program guidelines?
Well, I appreciate the thought, and that thought had been in our minds at the time that we were working on our initial development of the EEIC grant. There are some funds in there specifically to help support the 2-year and 4-year institutions to do this work. That was part of the plan when we were thinking about how can we best help support the field. In addition, CAP has had its own funding through the CDE up until this time, although I understand that funding is being reduced. But CAP has had the funding to be able to do that work for all of the community colleges that are using the CAP curriculum and for those that are CAP aligned that accept those courses. And that's been a big help to getting running start on this issue.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. This is really critical that folks participate. So it sounds encouraging that there may be some possibilities for incentivizing. Thank you so much.
Honestly, we have had nothing but people interested in volunteering. So that's very encouraging.
Two pieces of good news. Thank you, Phyllis.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Sloan?
Thank you. I'm just going to build on what Commissioner Martinez and Dr. Jacobson were saying. I'm thinking back to the days when in California we had the opportunity to develop our performance assessments. And we saw that great report yesterday, which, by the way, I don't think I adequately acknowledged all of the work that had gone into that. And what is so momentous about that is that we have 3 performance assessments in California that are all measuring the teacher performance expectations in good ways, and it has allowed for creativity and development and opportunities to create what we need for our students in our communities. And this speaks to the point I'm going to make right now, because back in the early days, when we were developing a couple of different assessments in California, I was involved in one of them, the performance assessment for California teachers. And at the time, some of you may remember, we had legislation that required us to develop these performance assessments and start implementing them. And then that legislation went on moratorium for several years. And the opportunity with moratorium was that programs just got to experiment with what was being created, not just experiment, but inform what was happening. And through that process, the programs like ours who took that up, we absolutely got stronger and better. And we had control over what was going into those assessments based on our experiences. So I think that is one really positive reason for participating in this work. You get autonomy to shape it for your own work, and you're empowered to shape it for the state. I'd say the other part to this work that was so important was at the time we were simultaneously implementing new teacher performance expectations. They came out at roughly the same time. And then these new tasks, these performance assessment tasks. And what was different about standards versus the performance assessments was the performance assessments really, we had to start taking those standards and say, okay, what does this actually look like in practice? If a teacher is going to meet standard, TPE 6, what are they doing in the classroom? And that really helped us get clear on what does this standard look like. I think standards can oftentimes, we can think we understand what they say, we can think we know what it looks like, but oftentimes, at least this is what we found in our own work, and we did a lot of self-studies on this, our teacher educators had very different ideas about what it actually looked like in practice. So I think the simultaneous work of the TPAs and the implementation of the TPEs is actually really important, particularly if we're using the TPA in formative ways, both to inform candidates and inform programs about their practice. And it seems to me that that is the way this is being set up. So I encourage us to do it in that way for a while.
Thank you, Commissioner or Chair Sloan. Chair Sloan. I really appreciate those comments because that's exactly what we had in mind in structuring the work, the way that it's being structured, and in seeing this as an opportunity for programs to become familiar with the idea of performance-based assessment, because the ECE world has not typically looked at assessment in those ways before. And it's an incredible learning opportunity for all of us. And being able to work with Amy Rising on the development of the TPA will only make this process stronger because she's got such a rich background in helping communities look at what the potential for this kind of work can be. So it's an amazing opportunity that we have.
Commissioner Brown?
You're muted.
You're on mute, Commissioner Brown.
Yeah, I just figured that out. So I think that this work around moving and combining this work of this field in developing TPEs and into TPAs and the back and forth that Tina talked about, I think is important, which makes me think that part of this work will need to be also the concern that came up about the survey that may not be as inclusive or as it should be of all of the institutions that want and need to participate. So I think we should look at that because that was sort of the TPE piece of it. How do we take the courses that we're teaching and then get the TPEs and then do that connective work? So that somehow I would, well, I'll just say I think you want to make sure that you have a strong base in the teacher performance expectations so that your assessments make sense and stay connected.
Indeed.
Can I offer some information about the survey? I understand that a number of commenters have raised that question, and now Commissioner Brown has also. And so I actually reached out to CAP to ask them about the survey because I've been hearing these things myself. And what CAP said is that the survey was sent to a wide list of ECE faculty with requests to more broadly circulate it to their respective communities. That was an open invitation that was made to the field when it was sent. I don't have the list of to whom it was sent, but this was not an activity that was conducted by the commission, and the commission did not circulate the survey itself. This was a work of Peach, and sorry, I keep saying the wrong one. It was a responsibility of CAP, and CAP was funded to do this work. When a request came in late in the process to extend the date for responding to the survey, CAP indicated that because this work was part of a contractual obligation they had, and there was a scope of work with a finite time frame to this, and there was also a fiscal year end that had to be respected in terms of the work, that it was not possible to extend the deadline at this late stage. However, CAP also indicated that all of this was available on the CAP website for persons to look at who were interested. And that in addition, there is apparently a related process called a 5-year review for the child development and ECE ID descriptors. I'm not from the community college system. I'm not familiar with what that means, but it should make sense to those of you who are. And that is also being done in conjunction with CAP work. And so there will be forthcoming another vetting survey that will enable 2-year and 4-year faculty to provide feedback for any updates to these descriptors, including any that result from the CAP revisions. And so CAP respectfully suggests that the 2 vetting opportunities combined will provide a rich opportunity or a richer opportunity for the field to contribute to this work.
Did CAP know when the vetting survey about CID would come out? Because it does happen every 5 years, and I don't have in my head what the timing is.
I know that CAP has said that the 5-year work is currently in process. I don't have the specific dates for any surveys, but it is currently in process.
Well, I'm going to respectfully hold off on endorsing that exact thing, because I think if there's significant numbers of, say, 4-year colleges that haven't been able to step in, and if CAP sent out the survey requesting that faculty give it to people they know, that might have just been a little bit informal and maybe not as inclusive as we would like. So I'll just hold off on that for now.
Okay, so this is an information item and no action is needed at this time. Dr. Jacobson, you have a lot of information here to move forward with this. And absolutely, it's great to see this item back on our agenda. So with that, we having no additional items, I adjourn the Educator Preparation Committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Rodriguez. Next is the Professional Practices Committee. Commissioner Cooney, will you please convene the committee?
You're on mute, Commissioner Cooney.
Crossed up with you. Okay. I will convene the Professional Practices Committee, which as usual has one item. The public is entitled to comment on this item if they email their request to comments@ctc.ca.gov or call 916-322-6253. And the request must include the full name, phone number, if you're participating through the phone. And then your affiliation and agenda item number 3A. The meeting host will call your name, unmute your microphone to allow you to share your comments. This is the workload report, which we, as all of you know, I'm sure, even the new commissioners do at every single one of our meetings, is to update the commission and the public on the workload of the division. And we have our Division Chief, Gil Gonzalez, here today to make the presentation. Mr. Gonzalez.
Good morning, everyone. This is item 3A, the DPP workload report, an informational item. As you are aware, the dashboard reports on 6 key measurements in line graph form, showing both current year numbers as well as prior year numbers for comparison purposes. And I will be highlighting the May 2020 stats. As you can see from the total cases graph at the end of May, the division had a total of 2,649 cases, which is within the normal range of the 2,600 to 2,800 cases. This is down from the March total of 2,951. We can attribute that to the reduction to various factors, to include the lower number of cases we've opened recently. The number of cases open is the second graph. In May, we opened 202 cases, which is a great deal less than the normal 400 to 500 cases that we open on a monthly basis. Since the COVID-19 closures, we've received fewer applications and other reports of misconduct from all sources, which has resulted in fewer new cases being opened in the last 3 months and contributed to the reduction of the overall caseload. The initial and formal review graphs are looking somewhat normal as the committee continues to effectively handle the large number of cases under consideration following the cancellation of the March meeting. The numbers in these two charts reflect the number of cases reviewed by the committee during its 3-day meeting in May. The number of cases closed in May was 383. This is the 3rd month in a row that cases closed was below the normal range of 400 to 500 cases that we typically close. The numbers have improved the last 2 months, again, following the cancellation of the March committee meeting. The number of AG cases has also improved or been reduced, as shown in the last graph. AG cases refer to cases in which an educator requests an administrative hearing to challenge the recommendation for discipline made by the committee. As of June, we had 151 cases. I'm pleased to report the improved numbers, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions of Mr. Gonzalez from the commission? Yes, Commissioner Hartwig.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez, for this report and for the hard work that your department continues to do. I just wanted to ask if there's, if you expect that there will be a surge in new cases at some point as school districts are able to get back to a new normal, or
I believe it will
pay attention to this again.
Right. I believe when it does reopen, we will be receiving the normal amount of cases, and that, you know, the increase can occur or go back to normal as far as the number of cases we open. We're continuing to process the same number of cases as the committee, so I don't expect, as far as our overall numbers, to increase too greatly.
Good. So you don't expect that the surge will mean that there'll be a workload problem when that happens?
No, not at all.
Go back to a normal range.
Right. No, not at all.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions of Mr. Gonzalez? Let's see if there are any public comments. Recording Secretary, do you have any public comments for this item?
No, we do not have any public comments.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, any comments from commissioners on item 3A and our workload report? If you've used the raise hand technology, I can only imagine that's the reason I don't see it all listed here, but I can't tell. So, oh, here's one.
Rodriguez.
Commissioner Rodriguez.
I just wanted to give you practice with the raise hand.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to acknowledge the work that you all do. It's incredibly important work, and I know that it's a lot. So thank you so much for all that the division does.
Thank you, Commissioner Rodriguez. It's always good to have the commissioners indicate what we feel in the way of appreciation for our staff and all the work they do below the surface that we get to glimpse at every time we meet. Any other comments, questions, or concerns from commissioners? Okay. Not seeing any, then I will adjourn the meeting of the Professional Practices Committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Cooney. Next is the Certification Committee. Commissioner De La Torre Escobedo, will you please convene the committee?
Yes. I now convene the June 2020 meeting of the Certification Committee to order. The committee has one item before it today. I would like to remind members of the public that wish to speak on a specific item to please email your requests to comments@ctc.ca.gov or call 916-322-6253 and indicate which item you wish to speak to. The meeting host will call your name and unmute your microphone to allow you to comment. After you have finished your comments, your microphone will be muted again by the meeting host. Item 4A presents proposed amendments to Title V of the California Code of Regulations pertaining to official transcripts. This is an action item and will be presented by Josh Speaks. Mr. Speaks, will you please begin?
Thank you. Good morning, commissioners. Sorry, I'm using two different types of technology here, so hopefully everyone can hear me. As the chair mentioned, this item proposes amendments to Title V of the California Code of Regulations that are necessary to expand and to clarify the definition of what documents constitute an official transcript for the purpose of verifying an individual's academic record. Currently, the Commission's definition is contained in Title V, Section 80435. Section 80435 has not been amended since it was initially created back in 1983. During the intervening 37 years, many changes have taken place with how institutions of higher education create and distribute transcripts. Today, transcripts are rarely, if ever, seen with an actual ink signature on an institution's registrar, and many no longer use raised seals to signify that a document is authentic. Further, more and more institutions are relying on an electronic transcript delivery model. Therefore, Commission credentialing staff have identified a number of changes intended to provide greater flexibility to verifying institutions as well as to Commission staff while still ensuring the integrity of the process. Based on these recommended changes, in March of 2016, the Commission distributed a credential information alert providing additional guidance to institutions of higher education, local education agencies, and Commission-approved program sponsors regarding the type of documents that would be accepted as official transcripts, depending on whether the application was submitted online or via paper app. The proposed regulatory changes included in this agenda item are intended to update and to codify that previously issued guidance. So the specific changes that are being made by the regulations are as follows. In paragraph A, the proposal removes a September 1st, 1983 implementation date, as we're obviously well past that date, and the requirements are intended to be continuous and therefore not tied to any specific deadlines. The proposal also adds the phrase requiring degree verification or evaluation to establish academic eligibility for the document requested to clarify the purposes served by the submission of official transcripts and verified true copies of transcripts. In paragraph B, we're replacing the phrase approved programs with the phrase Commission approved programs, just for clarity and consistency with the rest of the section. Subsection B1 proposes deleting the word college and adding the phrase Commission approved program sponsor to clarify the wider, more diverse array of organizations that are impacted by these regulations compared to 1983. It would also add the words certificate or authorization as other types of recommendations program sponsors submit that may require the inclusion of transcripts. In subsection B2, the proposal would delete the original paragraph in its entirety and move it to paragraph E to accompany the definition of terms used by the section. Instead, this paragraph would now state that the Commission will accept copies of official transcripts from education agencies that verify their authenticity with original documents. Subsection B3 would add language to establish guidelines for accepting electronically transmitted transcripts, an option which did not exist in 1983 when the regulations were created. Subsection B4 would add language to establish guidelines for accepting unofficial transcripts from institutions of higher education when they are submitted to the Commission with a recommendation for a credential, certificate, or authorization. Unofficial transcripts may only be accepted when the institution submitting a recommendation on behalf of a candidate is also the institution where the applicant earned the degree indicated on the transcript. An additional subsection numbered C1 has been added to clarify that electronically transmitted transcripts will not be accepted directly from an applicant for a document. Electronically transmitted transcripts must be received from the degree-granting institution, either directly or through a vendor used by the institution, or from a third party other than the applicant, such as a Commission-approved program sponsor or education agency, to minimize the opportunities for tampering or fraud. Paragraph D will be changed to clarify that illegible transcripts will not be returned, but that the Commission will contact the applicant or the education agency submitting the application on the applicant's behalf and request legible, correct transcripts be submitted. Paragraph E is being subdivided into two sections, defining the terms official transcript and verified true copy as they're used in this section. Subparagraphs E1A through E1C have been added, stating that an official transcript may be an original paper transcript issued by the institution and bearing either the signature of the institution's registrar or the impressed seal of the institution, one electronically transmitted to the Commission from a college or university, or one electronically transmitted directly to the Commission from an organization authorized by a college or university to forward its transcripts electronically. And finally, subsection E2 defines a verified true copy of an official transcript as a photocopy either stamped by an official representative of the agency or including a statement from an official representative that the copy is an authentic duplicate of the original transcript. Staff is recommending approval of these changes to Title V in order to clarify the means by which an applicant's transcripts can be verified. A public hearing will be scheduled for this item only if an interested party or their representative submits a request in writing no later than 15 days prior to the close of the public comment period. Thank you very much, and I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Speaks. We will now open for public comment. Recording Secretary, are there any public comments?
No, we do not have any public comment requests.
Okay, given there are no public comments, we will close that. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments on this item? Chair Sloan?
Just an acknowledgement of the immense amount of detail-oriented work that this requires. And Mr. Speaks, thank you for explaining that so clearly and eloquently and diving into all the details that's needed for this.
I'm scrolling through. Anybody else? Okay, Commissioners, do I have a motion to approve the proposed amendments to Title V California Code of Regulations, Section 80435, to allow submission of the rulemaking notice filed to the Office of Administrative Law?
Commissioner Barnes, so moved.
I didn't catch that. Who was that?
Barnes, Commissioner Barnes.
I have a motion by Commissioner Barnes. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. I have a second by Commissioner Kung. Any further discussion?
Marisol?
Yes.
I certainly am going to support the motion, but I have to say in passing that I mourn the end of the requirement of the impressed seal from the document. It signals a new era of legal authentication.
Absolutely. Thanks for adding that. Okay. Will the recording secretary call for the vote, please?
Kirsten Barnes.
Aye.
C. Michael Cooney.
Aye.
Marisol de la Torre Escobedo.
Aye.
Johanna Howick.
Aye.
Alicia Hine.
Aye.
Perry Jackson.
Aye.
Kevin Quinn.
Aye.
Jane Marks.
Aye.
Cynthia Martin.
Aye.
Monica Martinez.
Aye.
Ade Rodriguez.
Aye.
David Simons.
Aye.
Tina Sloan.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right. Motion carries. Thanks again, Mr. Speaks. This concludes the business before the certification committee. The committee is now adjourned.
Thank you, Commissioner de la Torre Escobedo. Next is the Fiscal Policy and Planning Committee. Commissioner Martinez, will you please convene the committee?
Thank you. I now convene the June 2020 meeting of the Fiscal Policy and Planning Committee. The committee has one item before it today. I would like to remind members of the public that wish to speak on this item to please email your requests to comments@ctc.ca.gov or call 916-322-6253. Please make sure the request includes your full name, phone number if participating through phone only, your affiliation, and the agenda item number and title. Make sure the name you provide matches the name used to join the meeting. The meeting host will call your name and unmute your microphone to allow you to share your comments at the appropriate time. After you finish your comment, the microphone will be muted by the meeting host. Item 5A is update on Governor's proposed 2020-21 budget. It is an information item. Michelle Peralt and Vivian Sue will present this item. Ms. Peralt, will you please present this item?
Yes, thank you. Good morning. So I'm here today to provide you with an update on the 2020-21 state budget and its impact on the commission. I'm coming to you with a very different report than I gave to you in January. As many of you are aware, we've had some changes in our fiscal outlook at the state. So the governor did release his 2020-21 May revision budget proposal last month. As anticipated, the budget is very much in flux given the current fiscal environment that is due to COVID. And as many of you have probably likely heard, the budget shortfall that they are predicting could be upwards of about $54 billion. So definitely a different a budget we're looking at than we were in January, where we had some additional revenue coming in. As it relates to the Commission's internal budget, however, our budget remains largely unchanged. As a reminder, we're a specially funded agency, and because of that, our funds are all not out of general fund, but out of the fees that we collect, the majority of which come from our credentialing fees. So our overall budget in the May revision is similar, exactly the same as what it was in January, and that's $29.8 million. This does continue to include a $5.5 million set aside. This is for the work we do for the work the Attorney General does, on our behalf related to discipline. The funding also did continue to include 2 full-time positions. If you recall, when I came to you in January, we were informed that we were going to receive 2 full-time positions in order to support the overall ongoing increased workload that we have associated with our accreditation process. Those 2 positions are still remaining in the May budget proposal, and for that we are thankful. The May revision also did continue to propose the elimination of accreditation fees for just the 2020-21 year. These fees, however, will be covered out of the Commission's reserve, so it's not funding that is something we have to take out of the overall operating budget of the $29.8 million. However, May revision did make some changes, and that included eliminating the several proposals that would have brought in over $350 million in teacher shortage grant funding. Not a surprise that we saw that be eliminated, as we know the state is seeking to be able to cut funds wherever they could to shore up that budget deficit. In addition, we were informed that another step in trying to meet the budget deficit that was proposed by the governor was a borrowing of any reserve funds that are available to the state from either general or special fund resources. Because the Commission's reserve is at a healthy level, they are proposing, or the governor is proposing in his May revision, to borrow $14 million from the Commission's teacher credentialing fund reserve. That fund currently sits at just over $25 million. So this is just a little over half of that reserve. This would be set to be paid back with interest to the Commission beginning in 2022-23. Following the release of the May revision, the legislature then spent some time working in somewhat of a truncated schedule of budget subcommittee hearings. Due to COVID, the legislature came back, took a break, and came back later than they would have during a normal year. This created a bit of a condensed schedule for them to both hear budget items and to hear legislative proposals. So they did meet and do some hearings regarding our issues. As you can imagine, our issues were not a huge bit of topic of conversation. They were focused on a lot of the larger pictures, but they did meet. The legislature did announce and vote on a proposed budget, which was released this past Monday on the 15th. Unlike many years when the legislature passes the budget, that budget that they passed is a negotiated budget that both the governor and the legislature have come to a decision and a compromise on. So generally, the budget we see when the legislature passes it is typically very close to the budget that gets signed by the governor. That is not the case this year. There is a constitution deadline, or there's a statutory deadline that the legislature must pass a budget by June 15th in order to continue to receive their salaries. They did pass a budget, but it is definitely not a final budget and is still fairly off the mark from what the governor is proposing. The governor has proposed some significant cuts to education in his May revision, as well as a 10% reduction to state staff salaries. This is, again, in an effort to shore up the deficit, and those were placed as part of his proposal pending some federal bailout assistance, federal funds coming our way. On the other hand, the legislature passed what we're kind of calling a placeholder budget. They did not make a significant cuts in education. They are instead holding back on those cuts and would rather not take those up until we realize or until we know whether we will or will not get federal assistance. So as you can see they're trying to come to a place, but just in a slightly different path. So we're continuing to watch that. We anticipate in the next week and a half, that there will continue to be budget negotiations between the governor and the legislature, and that the governor still has a deadline to sign the budget by June 30th. So we anticipate we'll hear some more, again, as I said, in the next week and a half related to what the overall budget looks like. I think for the commission's budget, we likely will not see huge changes off of what the May revision was proposed by the governor. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions, comments.
Let's see. Commissioner Hartwick. Yes, thank you. I was just interested to hear, is this something that's done before or been commonly done where the state borrows from its individual agencies and then pays them back? I'm assuming this is low risk for us, that there's a guarantee that we will be getting those monies back into our own reserve budget.
This has been done before. When we went through the great, well, actually not the last recession, but the early 2000s, we had funds borrowed against our reserves then as well, with an effort, with a guarantee of that we'd be paid back. The way the language is written, it indicates that they borrow the funds, they pay it back with interest. And the state has done this in its history, and it's not common. I wouldn't say it's common, but it has certainly been done. And then it is an obligation of the state to reimburse back those special funds at a given time. Now, they've indicated that the funds will be returned back to, the payment will begin back at $5 million a year starting in 2022-23. As you can probably imagine, that could possibly shift depending on how this recession and this fiscal forecast plays out. But we'll continue to monitor it. As it relates to your question about our reserve, yes, they did not take all the reserve. Obviously, they've left us with a reserve that's a little less than half. For us, that is adequate. That doesn't make us overtly nervous as it relates to the funding being out of the reserve. Obviously, it's not something we want to have year over year, particularly understanding that we don't have a good, we don't know quite yet what our revenue will look like and whether we'll see some year over year revenue dips in outgoing years. But we feel quite comfortable at this point that $14 million is not going to harm our operating capabilities.
Great, thanks. Great, thank you, Commissioner Hartwick, and for the reassuring answer. Commissioner Grenish-Shire.
Michelle, I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. Higher ed and K-12 are facing significant budget reductions, and we are in the process of planning how we're going to
respond to that. So did I hear you say that the commission did not anticipate having to respond to any of the budget cuts, so therefore no action, no furloughs, none of that at this point?
So let me clarify. The commission's overall operating budget, we call that our expenditure authority, is remained the same. So we were provided the same level of funding. Now, that is different than whether we will have to respond to the staff cuts that have been proposed for state workers. It has been, and again, there's obviously continued negotiation happening with bargaining units and everything at the state level. But that aside, when this has happened in the past, regardless of the fact that we are a special fund agency, all state agencies are still subject to those cuts. So yes, we are anticipating, if the governor's proposal is what moves forward and gets signed, that yes, our staff would still take that 10% with some, I presume, some type of a furlough, although those details they're still negotiating with the unions on. Does that help clarify?
Thank you. I have a follow-up question, and it's also more of a clarifying question as well. So CTC as the agency, we didn't really receive significant budget cuts, but am I right that many of the programs that would have gone through CTC, like teacher residencies, a classified school employee credentialing program, et cetera, those have been reduced, which a lot of times we kind of just still staff that as well. So did that impact the CTC budget then?
So it impacts the budget if you were to look at it on paper. So, and I appreciate the question, Commissioner Martinez. Let me explain a little bit as to how these cuts have impacted grants. So as you know, the commission has been receiving grants starting in the 16-17 fiscal year. The grants related to classified, to teacher residency that we received last year, to the local solutions grants, and to, I'm trying to think if I'm missing any. I think those are the only ongoing active grants. Those are still moving forward. We have been funded for those. They did not cut those funds. However, what I will say is there was just under it was like 23 million in change in the residency grant that was unallocated. In other words, we were going to go out for a second round RFP on those. The state has swept that unallocated money. So in other words, they didn't want to take funds away from grantees who had already been guaranteed the funding, even though it might come to them in outgoing years. They did take that small portion of funds that had already been given to us. And then on top of that, they also swept the proposed just over $354 million that was proposed for the next year's budget that the governor had put into his January proposal. So that $354 million we would not have received until the 2020-21 year, so July 1st of this year. So yes, those were also swept. I'd like to also just to note, you made a comment about staff related to the grant funds. We have really received, to be honest with you, over the course of the almost 4 going into 5 years where we have overseen grants, 1 FTE to manage that. And so we don't anticipate obviously needing to cut that position because we still have grants, we still need that oversight, and quite frankly, we've been using kind of parts of several staff throughout the years to make sure that we could implement those programs successfully.
Great. I really appreciate that. A really thorough answer. Thank you, Ms. Peralt.
Sure.
I don't see any more questions online, so I might ask one big question then. But do other commissioners, before I ask a question, have? So in general, given the challenges that we're up against, how does this budget impact the challenges around teacher shortages?
Well, and I will let...
I warned you.
No, absolutely. I know I will tell you kind of where my thoughts are with that. I will also look to Executive Director Sandy because I know she has, I'm sure, some thoughts on that as well. We went into this with a teacher shortage that we've been well aware of, particularly in acute areas, right, of special education, bilingual, math and science. And I think you have seen that the grants that have been administered and provided some funding for over the past 4 to 5 years are an attempt at trying to minimize that shortage. I think just as anything, we were kind of ramping up with funds and really putting some resources into some rich programs to move that needle when COVID has swept out the fiscal stability from underneath us. So it certainly, I think, will obviously have an impact. What that impact will look like is uncertain at this time. And I think you have to overlay it with the fact that we are still uncertain right now about what the true teacher shortage will be moving forward, because we don't really have a good idea of what district need is going to be. Because as we know, we are trying to prepare teachers, but we also are very much aware that many districts are grappling as they move into next year with potential freezes of hiring because their funds are severely cut. So, that employment demand piece will also play a significant factor in what does the overall shortage look like. But I think the reality is we're going to continue to see some form of shortages, at least in all of those acute areas. So that's my own 2 cents. I'm sure Director Sandy has some as well.
I'll just add a little bit. The optimism of January, the set aside of $354 million focused on teacher recruitment in our budget, in addition to funding for the Student Aid Commission for forgivable loans, et cetera, was all wrapped around an idea that was articulated by this administration that we would end the teacher shortage. And I think that optimism was very exciting for all of us to contemplate what was it going to take to really put the resources to bear that would eliminate the teacher shortage, within the next 3 to 5 years. So that's on hold. And as Michelle has pointed out to you, the uncertainty about how we're going to be staffing schools in the fall is the big question that everyone's grappling with. I heard Commissioner Simmons speak yesterday about having a plan A and a plan B, where plan A involves layoffs and plan B involves hiring. And it's June, almost the end of June here. And I think you need to know your answer fairly soon about which way you're going to go. We hear about layoffs being high potential in some areas of the state. I'm also hearing from local school districts about whether or not they can put their general ed teachers in special ed assignments, because special education continues to be an area of chronic shortage. And the answer to that question is no, you can't. But it's a big, complex problem that's made far more complex by the way in which 2021 is going to unfold as a year. Whether we'll also see this kind of instability in the 21-22 year remains to be seen. I think so much of our future depends on treatment and vaccine availability for COVID. And in the meantime, we adapt. So it's very difficult to project what the long-term impact on shortages will be. I'm also one of the questions I have is about PIPs and STIPs. I think we had something like 6,000 people serving on PIPs and STIPs last year because we had the immediate need to fill classrooms. I'm wondering what the demand will be for emergency permit type documents in the future, depending on how we're structuring instructional space. So I wish we had a better answer to the question. There are a lot of variables, and as the plans become clearer that for school district reopening and setting up and maintaining virtual learning spaces, we need to adapt with those plans. and focus resources where we can. Truly grateful for the opportunities that we were given this year through flexibility we could employ and flexibility that the administration and the governor provided us with the executive order to keep our current pipeline moving forward. We're very hopeful that the challenges of this upcoming year and maybe the year after will not have a depressive impact on people seeking to move into teaching, because we still have 6.2 million children in our schools who need to be taught and they need teachers. So we're trying to keep our eye on the long game here, keep all programs moving as well as we can through what stimulus we have. If nothing more than encouragement, at least we've got that to offer. But it remains to be seen.
Well, it sounds like we have that to offer as well as our funds. So, but I appreciate the stewardship, quite honestly, of CTC staff with the funding and always keeping first and foremost issues around teacher shortages as well as teacher quality in the work that we do. So thank you for that. I don't see any more questions.
May I just add one last thing? I should have mentioned this during my presentation, but I do want to just let commissioners know. Obviously, we anticipate, because of the circumstances, that there will be one, if not several, mid-year adjustments that the state has to go down as they start to get a better understanding of their fiscal picture and as you know, they finish with taxes and the deadline not being until the middle of July. So we also will continue to monitor our own revenues, and we will in the next, at either the next commission meeting or the meeting after, be bringing back to you all a more internal outlook so you can see what's happening as it relates specifically to the commission and how the funds are coming in and being expended. So I just wanted to note that, because unlike where we normally are in June, where this is the end of the fiscal year and we kind of know what next year is going to look like, that's certainly not where we are this time around. It's definitely going to be a much more fluid conversation, and I anticipate changes well into the fall. So.
Thank you. And just a process point, because I think I may have forgotten to do this. I just wanted to check with the recording secretary that there were not any public comments, because I think I misstepped and did not check with that.
Thank you for circling back. No, we do not have any public comment requests.
Okay. So not seeing anything from the commissioners and not seeing any public comment period or any public comments, the public comment period for this item is now closed. And barring any more questions, this is an information item and no action is needed. Thank you, Ms. Peralt and Ms. Sue. This concludes the business before the Fiscal Policy and Planning Committee. The committee is adjourned.
Thank you, Commissioner Martinez. Before I go on, I want to do a quick check whether people need a 10-minute break or whether we want to go on. If you need a 10-minute break, I want to just see you do a thumbs up on screen. If you want to go on, just do a thumbs side. Thumbs up, break, thumbs side, go on. Go-ons have it. All right. Next is the Legislative Committee. Commissioner Hind, will you please convene the committee?
Sure will. I now convene the June 2020 meeting of the Legislative Committee. The committee has 2 items before it today. I would like to remind members of the public that wish to speak on this item to please email your requests to comments@ctc.ca.gov or call 916-322-6253. Please make sure the request includes your full name, phone number, if participating through your phone only, your affiliation, and the agenda item number and title. Make sure the name you provide matches the name used to join the meeting. The meeting host will call your name and unmute your microphone to allow you to share your comments at an appropriate time. After you finish your comment, the microphone will be muted by the meeting host. Our first item is 6A, Status of Legislation. This is an information item, and Sasha Horwitz will present this item. Mr. Horwitz, will you please begin?
Thank you, Commissioner Hind. Good morning, Sasha Horwitz, Government Relations and Public Affairs Manager. For the legislative update, I find it helpful to orient us to the current point in the legislative cycle before providing any specifics on bills. The legislature is currently in the second year of a 2-year legislative session. As Michelle mentioned, on Monday, both houses passed the 2021 budget, The budget bill is now in the governor's hands, and he has until the end of the month to sign or veto the bill. And of course, negotiations are ongoing. The budget is always accompanied by a series of trailer bills that provide the policy specifics. Once these are signed, they will go into effect starting July 1st, 2020. Sometimes trailer bills are signed later in the year, but the policies always go into effect starting July 1st, even when they are signed after that date. Today also happens to be the House of Origin deadline. All bills start in one house, either the Senate or the Assembly, and they go through committee hearings and eventually floor votes. Once this process is complete, bills swap houses and begin the process all over again. At midnight today, any bill that has not passed its House of Origin is considered dead for the year. Considering the impacts of COVID-19, which took an 8-week bite out of the legislative hearing schedule and led to the cancellation of 2 of the 3 scheduled Education Committee hearings, I'm pleased to report that the legislature has successfully moved both of our sponsored bills out of the Assembly, and they are now before the Senate. The first of these sponsored bills is AB 2485, the Teacher Credentialing Subject Matter Competence Bill, which is being carried by Assembly Member Ash Kalra of San Jose. As you'll recall, this bill would give candidates more flexibility to meet the subject matter requirements. Under current law, a candidate must either take and pass the CSET or complete a campus-based subject matter program. This bill would expand those options by allowing them to use prior coursework completed as part of an academic major, and also let them fulfill the requirement by mixing and matching competencies from all available options. The Assembly Education Committee inserted to the bill a 3-year sunset to signal that it is part of the state's COVID-19 response. It means it'll revert back to previous language after 3 years. Assuming the policy proves effective, staff can always go back to the legislature to propose a bill to remove the sunset. The bill is currently in the Senate Rules Committee awaiting assignment, and so far it has received unanimous support. The second commission-sponsored bill is AB 2541, Teacher Preparation Programs Regionally Accredited Institutions, which we like to call the Pre-Accreditation Bill. It is being carried by Assembly Member Jose Medina of Riverside. This bill seeks to clarify an issue affecting teacher candidates who graduated from college when it was in pre-accreditation status, meaning it was in the process of being accredited by a regional accreditor, such as WASC Senior, but the accreditation was not completed before the student's graduation date. This proposal would clarify that the Commission has statutory authority to establish regulations for this limited purpose. As in the previous bill, the Assembly Education Committee inserted a 3-year sunset to signal that it is part of the state's COVID-19 response. Again, assuming this policy proves effective, staff can always go back to the legislature to ask to remove the sunset. The bill is currently in the Senate Rules Committee awaiting assignment, and it is passed on consent at every hearing. So at this point, I'd like to pause quickly and open it up to questions from commissioners.
Okay, great. Commissioners, do you have any questions about anything you just heard? I see no questions. You may continue.
Exciting. Moving on, I'd like to share some legislation of interest to the Commission. There are 2 bills we are watching related to examinations. First is SB 614 by Senator Rubio. It's a holdover from last year. And this bill would make changes to the Reading Instruction Competence Assessment, or RICA, statute. It passed out of the Senate last year, and once the House of Origin deadline passes, it may be heard in the Assembly Education Committee. Next, AB 1982 by Assemblymember Cunningham would create a new option for prospective candidates to meet the basic skills requirements by allowing the programs and the Commission to accept letter grades of B or higher in credit-bearing higher education coursework. These would be used in place of the CBEST and must be in the areas of basic reading, writing, and mathematics, just like the test. Like our subject matter bill, it would allow individuals to use a combination of different available options to mix and match the requirements. This bill is currently in the Senate Rules Committee awaiting assignment, and I will discuss this bill in more detail as part of the next item. Staff has closely watched several other bills related to the Commission's work, which can be found printed in the item. Since the Education Committee canceled 2 hearings due to COVID-19, the bills were never taken up for consideration and will not have an opportunity to reach the floor for a vote. Technically, these bills are alive. However, because midnight today is the House of Origin deadline and the legislature has already begun its summer recess, these bills are, for all intents and purposes, dead. So this concludes my presentation on item 6A. Thank you, commissioners, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Let me see if I can get to the right screen. Everything open here. We will now open for public comment. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
No, there are no public comment requests.
Okay. Commissioners, this is the moment you've been waiting for. Questions or comments on this item? I don't see any hands. Nothing? Well, that was easy. This is an information item and no action is needed. Thank you so much, Mr. Horwitz. But don't go anywhere because our next item, 6B, is analysis of a bill. This is an action item, and when you are ready, you may begin.
Thank you. It sounds like I am the only stop before lunch, so let's keep going. This is item 6B, analysis of bill. Thank you, Commissioner Hind. As discussed in the last item, there is one bill that we would like to present in more detail to the commissioners with a staff recommendation that the commission take a support position if the bill is amended to address some of our concerns. AB 1982 by Assemblymember Cunningham gives candidates more flexibility to meet the basic skills requirements, or BSR, by allowing the use of college grades of B or higher in place of the CBEST exam. These grades would need to satisfy the same domains of basic reading, writing, and mathematics as the existing requirements. Under current law, candidates must verify proficiency in the basic skills of reading, writing, and math prior to being recommended for a preliminary credential. While most candidates use the CBEST exam to meet this requirement, other alternatives already exist in statute. Among these are passing the CSET in multiple subjects plus writing skills examinations, passing the CSU Early Assessment Program or the CSU Placement Examinations, achieving qualifying scores on the SAT or ACT, passing certain advanced placement AP examinations, or passing a basic skills examination from another state. This measure follows the same approach as the Commission's subject matter bill by offering alternatives to test-based assessments and allowing the use of performance-based ones. In addition to letter grades, the bill would also allow candidates to meet the BSR by mixing and matching components from available options. For example, a B in a math class in conjunction with passing CBEST scores in reading and writing. The bill has a 3-year sunset, which would give the Commission time to determine the effectiveness of this approach. Staff can always go back to the legislature to propose removing the sunset if needed. Last week, AB 1982 passed out of the Assembly and is now in the Senate. While staff has already worked with the author to provide technical support, staff would now like to recommend that the Commission take a formal support if amended position. In other words, the Commission would publicly support the bill, assuming the author accepts the recommended amendments. To summarize the amendments, staff recommends adding new language to the bill that specifies what courses may be used toward the BSR. To meet the reading skill requirement, a candidate would need to have a B or higher in a credit-bearing course in the subjects of critical thinking, literature, logic, philosophy, reading, rhetoric, or textual analysis. The writing skill would require a course in composition, English, rhetoric, written communications, or writing. Mathematics skill would require a course in geometry, mathematics, quantitative reasoning, or statistics. To be sure that no applicable course is missed, the candidate may also provide written documentation from the registrar or relevant department chair in support of using a course that wasn't among those listed. Double dipping or using the same course to meet multiple requirements would not be allowed. Finally, the bill adds clarification that a course must be a full credit semester-length course. Without these amendments, Commission staff would most likely need to develop regulations, and this process would significantly slow down implementation of the bill. So thank you, Commissioners. This concludes my presentation on item 6B, and I realize that's a lot of information to digest, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Okay, before we get into it, let's see if we have any public comment.
Danette Brown, please state your name and affiliation for the record.
Good almost afternoon.
Danette Brown. I'm an elementary teacher in La Habra, and I'm speaking today on behalf of the California Teachers Association. I'll keep it brief. The California Teachers Association supports AB 1982. We're in favor of the proposed amendments, and I would love to invite you to take a support if amended position today so we can move forward on AB 1982. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Danette. Do I have any other public comments?
Yes. Ann Wolf, please state your name and affiliation for the record.
Hi, my name is Ann Wolf, and I am representing myself. Good afternoon. I am here in support for AB 1982, as it is long overdue. Just because you can pass a basic skills test does not determine if you will be a good teacher. There are many people out there, including myself, who have a math learning disability, which makes passing the math portion of the CBEST even harder to achieve. I have personally taken the math portion of the CBEST 5 times. Each time I came close, but not close enough to pass. I have successfully passed both the reading and the writing portions. I am confident if given the option, I could pass the college level math course. As Ed Code currently states, you must pass the CBEST in order to get into the teacher credentialing program. AB 1982 is going to help so many who are discriminated against due to their learning disabilities and have no other options other than keep trying to pass the CBEST. AB 1982 will give a fighting chance to those who have exhausted all other options just to get into a teacher credentialing program. Changing Educational Code 44252 has been a passion project for me, as it has held me back in my career as an educator due to my math learning disability. Passing a standardized test is not a way to prove my ability to be a good educator. Entering a credentialing program should not solely be based on test measures. The successful completion of the curriculum in the program is the true test of one's ability to be a teacher. I highly encourage the Commission to continue to move forward in passing AB 1982. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Wolf. Do we have any other public comments?
Yes, our final public comment is Saret Kaminsky. Please state your name and affiliation for the record.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Chair Sloan, and Executive Director Mary Sandy. My name is Saret Kaminsky, and I'm Policy Director at CSESA, the County Superintendents Association. I wanted to voice CSESA's support for AB 1982 with the Commission's proposed amendments. We believe the intent of this bill is similarly aligned with CTC's sponsored bill, AB 2485, which CSESA also supports. Both bills seek to give teaching credential candidates additional flexibility and use CTC-approved undergraduate or graduate coursework to demonstrate competency. CSESA's longstanding legislative priorities are to eliminate barriers and duplicative steps towards gaining a credential, while also upholding CTC's rigorous standards to ensure the integrity of our teaching force. We believe AB 1982 with CTC's proposed amendments meet this threshold, and we urge the Commission's support on AB 1982 today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all of our public speakers. Commissioners, maybe this is the moment you've been waiting for. Our public comment is closed, and Commissioner comment, start with Commissioner Simmons.
In one of my previous careers, I did CBEST preparation back before I was actually a high school math teacher. I think that we always should be careful when we remove, when we try to streamline and remove barriers, because it might also lower quality. And I think that that is a balancing act that we're going to have to do for every one of these types of expansions. I would support the idea with the language change of supporting this bill. I do have a question though. Why is the registrar included in the language? I believe with the CSET waiver, it was the department chair who was the person who prepared the letter. So, and I know that's a very technical question, but what was the thinking there?
So on the CSET bill, 2845, there is no alternative person who could certify like this. So in consultation with our certification division, our understanding was the registrar would have the most familiarity with the coursework, as would a department chair. So that's why we have chosen those two. If you as the Commission want to debate that, we can certainly change any consideration based on these considerations.
Okay, other commissioners? Let's go with Commissioner Green-O'Shire.
This is one of those times that I wish I could vote. I think this is a really important step that we're taking. I just wanted to clarify that the registrar, from my perspective, is the appropriate person on campus to do the verification.
Thank you. Chair Sloan?
I agree with everything that's said here. We know one of the most equitable, or one equitable teaching strategy for teachers is to provide students with multiple opportunities to show what they know, different opportunities. And I think this allowing us to figure out what works, both with this one and with the CSET, we've really got to figure out what those processes are, as Commissioner Simmons said, to ensure that our teachers do have the basic skills for going into the profession. So I just had one question. Mr. Horowitz, you mentioned that the bill would eliminate double dipping, and I just wanted to check, did you mean double dipping between the content areas or between CBEST and CSET?
I meant, sure. So what we're referring to is whether somebody can use the same course in which they earned a B or higher to count toward both, in most cases, reading and writing.
Okay.
So I'll add that specifically listed in the bill, rhetoric is one of the listed course names for, or course subjects for both of those.
Do you want to follow up with that, Chair Sloan?
Well, I'm just thinking about that one. So if it is a course that demonstrates both writing ability, reading ability, then I wonder the reasoning behind no double dipping. Do we just need more evidence? Is that the reason?
Our thinking would be that this would allow you to use courses in a one-to-one basis to meet each of the 3 competencies. But this is, you are the commissioners, and you are welcome to provide different guidance.
I'm going to let you think about that, Chair Sloan, and go to Commissioner Simmons for a minute.
Is the issue one of both demonstrating receptive and expressive language in writing? I mean, if that's the case, then I don't see why, as long as it is explicitly demonstrated in a specific course, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to. For instance, textual analysis, if you have to read the text and then the way that you demonstrate you've done analysis is by writing, I don't know.
Chair Sloan?
I'm still not sure, but I do think that if we have an opportunity that we're shaping the process, and I might feel better with a preponderance of evidence that somebody does have the basis for what we expect our teachers to have, then perhaps we leave it unless I'm missing something. Leave it for now.
So this is Michelle Peralt. I'm going to just jump in just with a couple of thoughts here, and sort of some context too that I think might help as we have this conversation. So what we're doing is trying to determine, and the answer could absolutely be that the Commission is not interested at this point in this until maybe there's some additional dialogue or maybe some refinement on whether you want to take a formalized position on this bill. Right? We're looking at a support if amended position. I think some of the questions you've brought up are good ones. I will say, Commissioner Simmons, I think, the question you've proposed to at least myself and my staff is probably a little deeper than what our knowledge base, and is probably something that what we'll do is we'll write that down and we'll have some conversations with our technical staff, because again, that goes a little bit beyond the scope of probably something we'd feel comfortable making a call on. That being said, also, Commissioner Sloan, I think I hear what you're saying as well, and what we this is not our bill, right? So we're not sponsors of the bill. However, we have been given, an opportunity by the sponsors to play a fairly large role in shaping it. So to sort of answer your question, I think we do have some opportunity to make some changes and to provide some guidance. I think the other piece that is a good thing to point out and just remind folks on, and I'm going to let Sasha correct me if I'm incorrect here, but this bill, I believe, also has a sunset date that was put on it prior to its previous committee. The bill was actually introduced without a sunset date, and then as COVID was put into place, and the legislature, I think, was seeking some additional flexibility pathways. This NRC set bill, they moved forward, but they did so with the understanding that there was going to be a sunset, so that some of these conversations could continue to happen, but they wanted to provide a relief valve for some of the roadblocks for people getting in, right? Because we want people to still be able to move into program. So I throw all that out there, and that might have confused the conversation, but I wanted hopefully to provide some additional clarity. We certainly could put a pin in this conversation, but because you as commissioners only meet, every 6 times a year, and it doesn't always align really well for us with the legislative cycle, if we wanted to take a formal position, even if it's a support with amend, and we let the authors know that we have some amendments and we may have some additional, we'd like to get that blessing from you all, because our next meeting would be too late for the legislative process. So, and I think, as a reminder, I think this is a fairly critical issue for the field that they would like our voice on, or a more formal voice on.
Okay, now we have lots of hands raised. So I'm going to go in order from which they were received. Chair Sloan, you're first, and then Commissioner Simmons, you'll be second, followed by Commissioner Green-O'Shire, and then Commissioner Marks.
Okay, well, I really do want to hear what the other commissioners are saying, but I'm also I'm trying to think about if there is a way to have the right amount of flexibility that that gives us what we need without too much, stringent things that again become a barrier. So if the reading and writing opportunity of courses are the same, maybe that if you have a writing and expressive language course, there are a lot of courses that people take that require extensive reading in order to be able to pass a course. History courses, so that maybe there's a combination something there. So I'm just going to throw that out and then hear what other people are talking about.
Okay, Commissioner Simmons.
Well, I think that it's too important of a moment to let wordsmithing get in the way of supporting it. So I would want to support this one way or another. I just think structurally it's usually better if there is less written in legislation, and that gives the commission more opportunity to write more in regulation, because it's easier for the commission to change things than it would be for legislative changes, which hence RICA. I mean, that's the number one example of that. So I'll repeat, I would support this.
Thank you. Commissioner Green-O'Shire.
So Michelle, I just wanted to clarify, because I hear the need to have some content experts help us with this, but I also hear the need at the same time to move this forward. So I think I heard you say that if we support with amendments, that still gives us time to have those content experts advise us. Is that correct?
That is correct, and that is what we are asking as a support if amend position. And really what that does for us on the political side over here is it signals to the author, it signals to the supporters and the proponents of the bill that, you know, overall, absolutely, this is a wonderful idea. We do want to move forward something like this to assist our candidates, but that we do have some technical changes before we're willing to give a full support. And I think certainly as a commission, you could vote to do a support if amend. And you also we could do something later on, understanding that you're not going to meet physically as a body until after really the legislature is pretty much wrapping up. But something that if we meet some of those concerns and we work through some of those technical cleanup amendment language pieces, that we could go to a full support and that staff could do that. But right now, absolutely, it's a support if amend, which gives us that ability to continue the conversation.
Thank you for that clarification.
Hey, Commissioner Marks.
My question was just the same as Commissioner Grinoshire. I really want to support this with amendments. I'm feeling anxious that we might not. But I really look forward to the opportunity to clarify, working with the authors of the bill to kind of finesse some of these points. But really excited about this opportunity.
Okay, I have a couple of comments too. I was thinking about overlapping classes. You could technically take a math course that was critical thinking in mathematics. That was a reading-based word problem-based class. You can knock all three out in one class if you got really creative. Yeah, I think David was right when he said, you know, we don't want to put too much in legislation that we have to undo later. Also, I have an actual question on a completely different part of the bill. So we're going to, the amount of money that we would not be getting from candidates taking the test, are we going to should we expect that costs of credential renewals to go up, or how are we going to make up that money?
So this is one I did anticipate. And so our projections are as many as 75% to 90% of candidates could use this option. And if they did, that would translate to a reduction in revenue to the commission of $630,000 to $756,000. Given the size of our current reserve, that would be absorbable. And so even taking into account the loan to the general fund that Michelle spoke about in the budget item, that would still be absorbable by the current size of our reserves.
I might also just add to that, again, the bill has a sunset. So we've obviously looked at the fiscal impact as it relates to that time frame. I think if we were to look at both the CBEST bill and, quite frankly, the CSET bill, which both will have a fiscal impact, we feel like they're important issues, and we, from a fiscal standpoint, can absorb those in the bill's current form of what they're proposing. If we were to look at something that was certainly ongoing without any end date to it, we would probably need to have some further discussion in outgoing years about, are there some changes that might be needed to be made with other exams. We do currently have some exams that the commission does not take a fee on. For example, the teaching performance assessment is one, and that's something we've talked about. That's a broader conversation as it relates to what management fees look like overall for all exams. And it is something that we're starting to have conversations on because we have not gone down that dialogue path in a while, and it's probably becoming time. But for those two bills, we feel like this is completely doable.
Executive Director Sandy, did you want to add?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I think I wouldn't want this bill or the CSET bill or even the RICA bill to be halted in their forward progress because of an impact on our budget. That's an important consideration for us, but that's not the significant policy question here. I think that apropos of, our goals to diversify the workforce and to be, look for every barrier we can to, remove unnecessary barriers and create essential flexibilities. That's been a theme of our conversations of late. And all three of these bills, and this bill also, are intended to create qualitatively equitable alternatives to a testing requirement that has been a barrier for many people. So Michelle just alluded to the need to revisit what our management fee structure is for our examinations. Also, she mentioned that this has got a sunset date on it, and we need to understand what kind of opportunity will people take to pursue a coursework option here as a solution or as an alternative to the exam. And we have ways of bringing that analysis to you and talking about how we can mitigate the the budget shortfall that might occur in a short term around one of these examinations. But I think the policy question is more important even than the budget consideration, especially given that we have sufficient reserve to cover a short term issue that might occur.
I absolutely agree. And I think it's really reassuring to know that we have the money in the reserves so that we can spend the next 3 years figuring out more creative ways to keep our organization running rather than just testing. I do have a hand up from Chair Sloan.
So as I keep thinking through this and what Commissioner Simmons was saying, is there an advantage to us to ensure that we have some maximum flexibility over the next couple of years as we're trying this out? In other words, would there be an advantage to putting regulations around the courses rather than having this idea that the same course may not be used to satisfy more than one basic skills component in the bill itself? We just removed that. Mm-hmm. Would we still have the flexibility to ensure that somebody has the basic skills, but we wouldn't be held to something that's too stringent, that's creating more barriers?
That would absolutely be an option. So if we took out the language that would prohibit the double dipping, and it became necessary to develop regulations, we could always run the regulations. Hopefully it's written in a way that we could implement it as written and the regulations wouldn't slow us down. So all we would need to do is take out that sentence when we recommended it with our position to the author.
So to clarify, if it's silent, if there's nothing in statute, then yes, it is left up to interpretation. I think what Sasha was alluding to a little bit is that a reminder these bills do have sunsets, and regulations, as we all know, don't happen quickly or overnight. So we don't want to inadvertently, by trying to create flexibility, which is completely understandable, not be able to move forward this option to candidates quickly while we're waiting on regulation clarification. So because regulations take a minimum of a year up to about 18 months. So we just kind of keep that in mind as well. And I know that means it's sort of a walking balance of how much do you put in and how much don't you. I really, and again, it's up to all of you, and certainly I would love to hear some other thoughts if there's, concerns out there. I think though that we want to make sure we're at least signaling where we're at, and that we as staff will have enough information from all of you to have those conversations with the legislature and their staff to make the amendment changes that will make it possible, and that it's something that is both doable for us to implement and also is meeting the essence of what you want to see available to these candidates, and providing the assurances that you want in there, I think, related to what those courses look like and what counts and what doesn't.
So can I just add to this? I'm hearing some interest and the tension that exists between specificity and flexibility here. It seems possible to me that one sentence that says the same course can't be used to meet multiple, if you remove that, but allow any course any attempt to allow one of the subtests of CSET or CBEST to be addressed by a course, the case would have to be made that this course addresses that, and we've identified course titles that would do that. And if a course can be found to meet both the reading and the writing components of CBEST, I don't see that there's a necessity that we regulate that in order to interpret a more broadly framed law this way. And if it becomes problematic in the implementation, it's got a sunset date on it, and we can fix it in any of the upcoming legislative sessions in order to get to clarity. And we can also initiate regulations at any time that we feel necessary to bring clarity to it. It's preferable, obviously, to have a bill that can be implemented without the regs because it's got that much authority behind it. But I think that it's too early to overly constrain this, potentially. And that's the argument, or at least some of the concern I'm hearing from commissioners about allowing candidates to demonstrate through coursework that they've met the 3 basic skills, mind you, 8th grade level proficiency in reading, writing, and arithmetic through their collegiate coursework. So just
it almost
wanted
seems
to
like
offer
they
that.
accept a high school graduation. I don't see why we have to, well, that's a whole different topic. Commissioner Grano-Shire, you're next, and then Chair Sloan.
So I'm back to what Michelle has said to us, that it's important to signal support of this bill, and we can make those changes over time. So therefore, I don't see a need to remove that sentence at this point in time, if in fact we're going to have a window to do some more deep thinking about this in the next couple of months.
Okay, Chair Sloan.
And I just want to be sure that that sentence, the addition of that sentence, the same course may not be used to satisfy more than one basic skills component, was an addition we made because we felt like we needed it, or we felt that it wasn't going to pass if we didn't have it in there.
It's based on staff recommendation, no deeper consideration for the political success of the bill. So
Yeah,
I'm sure that if you decided you wanted to keep it in or take it out, the author's office would be just as willing to move ahead.
Let me give you a hand here, Sasha. So we typically, with all certification requirements where coursework is involved, have this no double dipping rule. Child development permits, there's a requirement for general education coursework. And historically, everything that has been put forward for coursework requirements has included a provision that an individual can't use the same course to meet multiple requirements. Oftentimes we see with the humanities coursework, they can sometimes fall into different content areas when we're looking at maybe a provisional internship permit qualification requirements or short-term staff permit qualification requirements. So it's just something that we have always put in with coursework requirements. That doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to, be used in this way for this specific pathway, but that was the reasoning behind why we included that language.
So here's what we could do. We could make a motion, and you could make your motion to reflect whatever you're feeling in your heart right now. Take out the sentence, leave in the sentence, and then we could vote, and it might pass or it might not pass. And then if it does not pass, then we could make another motion.
Yeah, let's see where people are at this moment. I'm just thinking, with respect to basic skills, is there something different than some more advanced competencies in subject matter that are required for teaching in your subject area? In other words, if you've demonstrated in a class that you can both do textual analysis and write, do we need 2 classes is just my question. So I'm going to move that we amend. I want to amend to remove the sentence, the same course may not be used to satisfy more than one basic skill component.
All right, I will second that. And now we have more discussion. Commissioner Simmons, you had your hand up. Did you?
I just wanted to move that we approve with amendments and leave it up to staff to determine what those amendments would be based upon the conversation that they heard. But I'm okay with the motion that's actually on the table.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table to, I don't even know, to approve with taking out that sentence that says you can't double dip.
And let's just clarify, you guys are suggesting that you want us to move forward with legislative staff, a support if amend position, but prior to doing that support with amend position with legislative staff, we are going to strike that one sentence related to the double dipping not being allowed. That's okay.
That's just perfect. Good. All right, let's go ahead and vote. Recording secretary, we are ready.
Kirsten Barnes.
Aye.
C. Michael Cooney.
Aye.
Marisol de la Torre Escobedo.
Aye.
Johanna Harwick.
Aye.
Alicia Hine.
Aye.
Harry Jackson.
Aye.
Kevin Quinn.
Aye.
Jane Marks.
Aye.
Cynthia Martin.
Aye.
Monica Martinez.
Aye.
Ade Rodriguez.
Aye.
David Simmons.
Aye.
Tina Sloan.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, excellent. See, that was fun. Having no additional items today, I now adjourn the legislative committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Hind. I'd like to reconvene the general session and move to item 1I, report of closed session items. Commissioner Hind, would you please read the report?
Yes. Give me 1 second to switch screens. Okay. Staff briefed the commission on the case of Emily Ismail versus CTC and no reportable action was taken. The commission granted Catherine Mancini's petition for reinstatement. The commission denied the following petitions for reinstatement: Donovan Varela, James Davis Jr., Alejandro Gonzaga, Gabriel Macias, Jennifer Parks. The commission adopted the following administrative law judge proposed decisions: Jones Okiki, Julie Simbab. The commission discussed the matter of number 22, Oscar Mendez, and remanded the matter back to the Committee on Credentials.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hind. Item 1J is new business. The bi-monthly agenda is presented for information. Recording Secretary, are there any audience presentations?
No, we have no additional audience presentations other than the letter that you received.
Okay. Any commissioner comments about the letter that we received? All right, then. I want to close our meeting with an acknowledgement of how hard all of our educators across all of our professional spectrums have been working. K-12 higher ed, that includes counselors, nurses, it includes school staff at the district level, at the school level, it includes administrators. These are the same people who volunteer their time for our work at CTC. All of the committees, on many of the agenda items that came to you is based on the work of these volunteers. All of you sitting here at the table, I know you have all worked maybe harder than you ever had in your professional lives. I want to acknowledge the hardships that people are going through in our communities, in our state, in our world at this moment. And I want to remind us of the power of acts of kindness. I have seen them happening all over. And I want to leave us with one line from one of Janie Mark's student's poem that keeps stuck in my mind from yesterday. The no matter what, I'm going to remain positive line, because I think we do have things to be positive about things are happening to make our world a kinder and more equitable world. Yesterday, the DACA ruling. A few days ago, the ruling on civil rights for LGBTQ workers. And today is Juneteenth. And we have much wider opportunities to engage and learn about it. And so thank you all. It was so good to see you and work with you the last 2 days.
Thank you.
I now adjourn the June 2020 meeting of the Committee on People Credentialing. The next meeting is on August 6th and 7th, 2020. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Chair Sloan.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.